Yo, yo, yo! Gonna start in a second. What up, what up? Thank you so much for the sub. Nice meme. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about this. The ogre boy himself. Yeah, I do. Talk about it. All right, ready to go. Hey, folks. Thank you so much for joining us on this emergency little session of ours. I do appreciate the support you guys have been giving me over the past week or so. It's been super gratifying to see the channel grow, see our numbers improve, all that stuff. First and foremost, I can't even talk. But the reason we're doing this emergency little session is because the administration has taken on basically a corruption maximizing approach to governance. And we have two pretty profoundly grotesque examples of it that all came out today. And I saw it while I was at dinner. And I'm like, I should talk about this as soon as I can, because I think that there's some insight maybe I can provide. But yeah, not good, horrible stuff. Further examples of the decrepit state of our executive branch these days. And my goal is to inform you about why you should consider what's happening to be impeachable, why it's evidence of corruption, and basically like what I think the takeaway is going forward, and why I think that we ought to treat this kind of stuff with an extra level of salience in light of our current predicament. I don't think it changes anything about the nature of the task before us, which is essentially to win elections, to get organized, I suppose, and win elections, and spread the message in the info war. I don't think anything like the Trump administration was corrupt yesterday. It's corrupt today. But to the extent that you think that it's useful to have some of these talking points or my perspective on it, I thought it would be good. But anyway, yeah, Megyn Kelly apparently doesn't care about corruption. So let's talk a little bit about abuse of power and what's happening. So the first story is that Trump truthed. That's a way of saying he put a message on his social media platform, Truth Social, that reads the following. I'll just read it. And then he took it down. Quote, Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially same old story as last time, all talk, no action. Nothing is being done. What about Comey? Referring to James Comey, former FBI director, and with whom Trump has long-standing grievances. Adam Shifty Schiff, current U.S. Senator from California, also someone who is a political enemy of the Trump White House, and previously when he was in the House of Representatives, chaired various different investigatory committees related to Trump improprieties. And Letitia James is the Attorney General of the state of New York, who did a civil fraud case against Trump and investigated him. They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. Then we almost put in a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who was never going to do his job. That's why two of the worst Democratic senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him, and there is a great case, and my lawyers and legal pundits say so. Lindsay Halligan is a really good lawyer and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served. Now, President DJT. So there's some things to note about this. The fact that he deleted, some people are speculating, well, was this a direct message? Was this a message to the public? Was it made to look like it was a leak of a private message? Was this some kind of cyber op to make people think that this is a private message or to get the message out? It doesn't matter. I want you to spend literally 0 time concerning yourself with that, because all lead to the exact result. Whether this was an internal DM that was put into a Truth Social portal and pressed enter, whether it was made to look like that, or whether this was intended as a public-facing post, the situation is all the same, which is Trump is exerting pressure, is demanding his Department of Justice to bring out indictments against his political rivals, regardless of the evidence. And he is saying specifically it's motivated by political grievance. In other words, he's admitting the impeachable offense here, which is abuse of power. Some people say it's still on Truth Social. My bad. Some people are saying it's still on Truth Social. I heard that it was taken down. It doesn't matter, right? Whether it was taken down or not taken down, it doesn't matter. Maybe it was taken down. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was meant as a direct DM. Maybe it was not. Maybe it was intended to look like that. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe this was all along meant to be public. I don't want you to worry your pretty little head about those logistics. All you need to worry about, all that matters to you, is the president is pressuring the Department of Justice to go after political enemies, despite the strength of the case against them, which has now been reported through multiple networks that the current DOJ is basically saying that there's no good case against these people. And specifically for political grievances. Because Trump is saying they impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served. What is he saying? That these indictments are justice, and the indictments that he wants to have against Letitia James, for example, out of Virginia, have to do with like mortgage fraud. And so he's saying, we want this case. We want you to bring a mortgage fraud case for revenge, right? Justice for my impeachment and my indictments. That we should use the Justice Department to start a criminal case against Letitia James and others for like mortgage fraud, not because of mortgage fraud, but because of justice. Justice being that you decided to come after me, so we come after you. That's his logic of it. So this is obviously an abuse of power. And we'll talk a little bit about what is an abuse of power and why it's impeachable. But he's not using the Justice Department to fulfill his oath that the law be faithfully executed. He is using the mortgage fraud statutes to exact political revenge against people like he's not prosecuting Letitia James for malicious prosecution or something like that, Reminder, Letitia James only did a civil fraud case against the Trump Organization and Trump in New York. So it's not like there's some kind of crime he's going after that's related to the impeachment or the indictment. Then maybe, okay, you can make a semi-argument that, like, all right, they're related. He wants justice for some horrible offense, and the crime that he wants to be done is a direct causal link to that like big soup of injustice. But it's not, right? He's basically saying, find something to charge these people with as revenge for my impeachment and indictments. Many of which were totally out of the hands of, certainly of James Comey. James Comey was not involved in any of Trump's indictments or Trump's impeachments, right? Like, Comey was involved in Crossfire Hurricane at a high level, although he wasn't like the on-the-ground guy. Crossfire Hurricane was the Russia investigation, which started as a counterintelligence investigation targeted at 4 affiliates of the Trump campaign, not Trump himself. In fact, Trump was not a target until he fired James Comey himself. So Comey has had no role in the federal government since he was fired by Trump in 2017. The first impeachment had nothing to do with James Comey's work. That had to do with an abuse of power and obstruction of Congress vis-a-vis the perfect call, so alleged perfect call, which is really a corrupt call to Zelensky, as well as an additional pressure campaign against Ukraine. It sort of relates to issues about Russia, but nothing that specifically is related to the Russia investigation or the Mueller report or anything like that. Thank you so much for the membership. So Comey doesn't have causality there. Schiff presumably would have some causality with the impeachments because he was in Congress at the time of both impeachments, but he doesn't have any role in the indictments. He was a member of Congress. He wasn't a state prosecutor. He wasn't a federal prosecutor. And Letitia James was a state prosecutor, but she didn't criminally charge Trump. But even if they did, right? Even if they did have causality in what he takes to be the injustices, which in fact were not injustices. The real injustice against the country was that he didn't face a consequence for his actions. That he was not removed in the first impeachment and disqualified from office in the first impeachment. That he was not removed from office in the second impeachment because it was too slow, but disqualified from office after a trial in the Senate after his presidency. And that he ultimately didn't, had the federal cases dropped, the state cases either paused or the New York one finished, but to not have real justice for the major essence of his crimes related to the election fraud, where he tried to defraud the American people in 2020 and 2021 over the right result of the election, but as that Joe Biden won, that he never faced consequences for that. That's the miscarriage of justice. That he's not rotting in a jail cell right now is a miscarriage of justice. That he has not been sentenced by a judge is a miscarriage of justice. And that is the disgusting outcome there. There was no politicization with these criminal investigations. Trump committed these crimes. And he was duly charged, and he should have been convicted of all of them. The American people, in their infinite wisdom, decided to reelect this man. The Supreme Court, in its infinite wisdom, decided to give him sweeping immunity in the Washington, D.C. case. We haven't even spoken about the Florida documents case, which was a slam dunk as far as anyone's concerned because of how obvious the facts are. But that's the real miscarriage of justice. But you don't need to care about any of that either. Right now, as we're sitting here, Trump is saying, I want you to prosecute these people, Comey, Schiff, and Letitia James, on mortgage fraud allegations that reporting says the facts aren't there for. I don't know. I haven't seen the cases. But even if the cases were strong, even if the cases were strong, Trump is telling you, I want you to do this because of justice over my previous matters, criminal impeachment matters. Trump is saying it out loud or directing it to the Pam Bondi, or tried to direct it to Pam Bondi privately. But either way, he's speaking to the Department of Justice and saying, this is what I want to happen, and this is why I want it to happen. Again, it's a little bit wrong for me to even characterize this as a revelation. We've always known that this is what he wanted to do. He campaigned on it. And we have seen him do the same kind of pressure campaign since he took office. Only this is probably the most distilled and best evidence, best synopsis of his efforts here, where he's laying out the corrupt reasoning for why he's doing this. So even if it doesn't shock or surprise you, it's useful for rhetoric purposes. This is corrupt as fuck. And it's laying out everything in front of you. It's all you need in one go. And it's what all of these MAGA influencers falsely, right? They lied to their audiences. This is what they were saying Biden was doing. This is what they said Biden did to Trump without any evidence whatsoever that Biden did this to Trump. This is exactly what Biden didn't do to Trump. Biden didn't interfere with the Department of Justice. Even, by the way, when there were reports that he was frustrated at the DOJ, Biden specifically did not do this. He kept his honor in that respect. It's one thing that I credit him for significantly, is for not doing that, for taking a step back and letting justice proceed impartially, fairly. That's why I'm so critical of the decision to pardon, after promising not to, and after making the decision to keep the special counsel or the investigator who's looking into his son. That was an honorable move by Biden to try to maintain the integrity of the Department of Justice. This is what the MAGA influencers lied to you about, and they said this is what Biden did. He did the exact opposite. The exact opposite. And there's no evidence that he did, interfered with Merrick Garland, interfered with the special counsels. David Weiss said that he didn't get any interference from Maine Justice. Jack Smith, same thing. Merrick Garland, same thing. No evidence that the White House came down and interfered in matters of the Department of Justice. Just simply no evidence for that. And the MAGA influencers don't give a shit about this. They don't give a shit that Trump ordered this, that Trump is asking for this for explicitly political purposes. Megyn Kelly, where's the tweet? Let's pull up Megyn Kelly's tweet. That's for the Tom Homan stuff. But okay, for the Tom Homan stuff, Megyn Kelly's like, we don't care. That's we'll talk about it in a bit. But the allegations there are potentially a conspiracy related to fraud or related to bribery, where he's taking tens of thousands of dollars in cash, $50,000 cash, money in a suitcase, it's fucking Pulp Fiction or some shit. And Megyn Kelly's like, we don't care. They don't care. They literally don't give a fuck. They never had principles. Never did. We saw it earlier today when I did that little stream on Rob Noor. Rob Noor says it's good to be a hypocrite. It's good to be inconsistent. They don't care, but they know you do. They know you care about principles. They know their audience, right, thinks that their influencers have principles. But the elites, these MAGA elites, they don't give a fuck. They have no principles. And they're openly stating, yes, we're hypocrites. We all saw it. Yes, we're absolutely hypocrites. There is nothing like this in the catalog of Obama, of Biden, of Hillary. Remember when there was the meeting of Bill Clinton at the tarmac with then the Attorney General was not Eric Holder, but the follow-on. Someone help me out. What was her name? Not Rice. Rice was not Attorney General. Someone help me out here. AG after Holder. Loretta Lynch, yeah. So Loretta Lynch had this like tarmac meeting with the Attorney General. Not Letitia James. She's the she's the AG of New York. Then in office, Attorney General was Loretta Lynch, and Loretta Lynch had this meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac while there was an investigation into Hillary Clinton, and it was inappropriate. It should not have happened. Loretta Lynch should not have met with Bill Clinton on the tarmac. We don't know the nature of what they discussed. As they stated, nothing about the investigation was spoken about, but it was a bad move for Bill Clinton to speak with Loretta Lynch. And James Comey, because of that meeting between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton, basically iced Loretta Lynch out of their charging recommendation and broke all like procedure because of the optics of that meeting between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton. And the Republicans were out for blood. They were like, oh my God, how can Bill Clinton, not the president, not in office, not having any power, how can you be meeting with Loretta Lynch on the tarmac? This is so crazy. And for years and years and years, they've made hay about that. Of a former president meeting with the current attorney general to discuss who the fuck knows what. We have no indication whatsoever that they said anything untoward or anything related to the investigation, or that Loretta Lynch even had any insight into the FBI's investigation, then into the emails, because they had not yet received, as I understand, a briefing from James Comey. James Comey, who, upon hearing about that meeting, essentially, again, iced out Loretta Lynch and broke all these different procedures, had this big expose, announced that Hillary Clinton, in the middle of an election, had been incredibly irresponsible, but not reckless under the statute's mens rea. Not grossly reckless to suffice for the Espionage Act count that they were considering. And he goes on and on and on. Clinton shouldn't have done this, breaking procedure and talking about investigation instead of letting the indictments and letting the filings speak for themselves, breaking the practice of the FBI because of the optics of how bad a potential conflict of interest. And there was I'm not saying that it was optically good. It was not good for Loretta Lynch to meet Bill Clinton on the tarmac. I can say that I'm consistent because I still care about principles. And James Comey did all that in reaction to what amounts to an innocuous meeting between Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch. Now we have the sitting commander-in-chief communicating with the attorney general saying, go after my political enemies, interfering in prosecutors who he has appointed, politicized prosecutors, frankly, who I would not be appointing if I were president. I would not want Democrats appointing, and firing them because they haven't prosecuted their enemies enough, specifically for political purposes. And they don't give a fuck. They never cared about the weaponization of the Justice Department. Never at all. You could tell because, A, they were lying about it. They were lying about all their claims. They were just pure lies. So factually, they were lies. And then on the actual merits of the opinions there, this was just it was a smoke screen. It was a way to convince their audiences who were eating from their hands, saying, yes, the Democrats have corruptly taken the Justice Department and they're using it for political ends. Nothing of the sort. Nothing of the sort. And it's not the first instance. One of the other corrupt things that the Trump administration has done with the DOJ is to stop prosecutions of their friends or people they want to politically use. Case in point, Eric Adams, sitting mayor of my city, New York City. He took bribes from Turkey when he was borough president of Brooklyn, and then later on was giving favors to the Turks and defrauding the state of New York in these election contribution, this scandal, humongous scandal, corrupt man, corrupt prosecution. Sorry, prosecution of corruption, not a corrupt prosecution, a base prosecution led by a bunch of like Federalist Society former clerks of like John Roberts or Scalia from the SDNY, a U.S. Attorney's Office with a streak and reputation for its independence. A base prosecution of a corrupt Democratic official. And Trump comes in and says, if you just give us some room with ICE, give us some room in accessing perhaps some of your prisons and letting us cooperate, helping our immigration policy, we'll drop this case. That's exactly what happened. That's what the judge found, that this smacks of a quid pro quo. That's what the prosecutors who were told to let this case go, that's what they said, quid pro quo. By the way, the person who led that corrupt deal, corrupt quid pro quo, they put that motherfucker. You want to know where they put that motherfucker? His name's Emil Bove. You know where he's at right now? Emil Bove. This is the guy who was telling the Department of Justice and DHS and these government agencies to like try to ignore the courts. This is the guy who cooked up the corrupt deal with Eric Adams. You want to know where he is? The Third Circuit Court of Appeals. They made this motherfucker a Article 3 judge on the Court of Appeals. An incredibly powerful and cushy position. They, for a while, couldn't even find a member of the Justice Department to put their name on the dismissal of the Eric Adams case. So corrupt was it. Long time, career officials at the DOJ quit, including like their ethics guy, because of this corrupt deal. That's how grotesque it was. Eric Adams like permanently killed his political future for this deal. He shared a lawyer, Elon Musk's lawyer. All the while lying in front of the fucking court during the dismissal. He was just dead to rights on this bribery case. Absolutely guilty. Totally guilty. Hell, I might want to show you a video because it involves one of the people we're talking about here. So just give me a second, folks. But that's not the only case, just so you're aware. The Trump administration has basically stopped prosecuting certain bribery offenses. Trump has the DOJ signing off on
Andrew Yang mayor. We call Eric Adams mayor.
signing off on the $400 million Qatar plane. And so the DOJ has become an extension of Trump's personal grievances and personal desires and ambitions to like get rich and to take power, authoritarian control.
Give up. New Yorkers never give up. People had me gone months ago, but you know what? I'm sitting on your couch talking
you
to Fox
are
and
sitting
Friends.
today talking about the new alliance between ICE and Adams. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Make it
Alliance was never severe.
Yeah,
And if he doesn't come through,
Make it. You're up early anyway.
if he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City,
Right.
and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?"
That's Tom Homan. This is Tom Homan, the border czar. This disgusting piece of shit is sitting with our mayor of New York saying, if you don't get in line, boy, that's what he's saying. we're going to come back and we're going to be up your ass. That's what he's saying. That's Tom Homan coming down and saying, we're the boss. That's Tom Homan. By the way, before, we were having these conversations about Mamdani, and we had some people, ostensibly Democrats, arguing that like we should vote for Eric Adams over Mamdani. Look at this dude. This dude laughing and smiling along Homan. Homan, who's like on orders from Trump. It is despicable. These motherfuckers are coming down and acting like they run New York City, and they want to extract corrupt political favors and pressure. And I do think, by the way, I don't want to say it, but it's the case that Eric Adams, in some sense, was being pressured politically from the Department of Justice. Now, he was also seeking advantage in that regard, and so I don't view him as a victim, because he was seeking to advantage himself and put the interest of himself above that of the city. But this was pressure that was being exerted on New York City and its representative by the Department of Justice under Trump. And then we find out, and we'll read this, this border czar, whatever the hell that means, he was taking cash money in exchange for favors to be promised and delivered down the line. And we'll talk a little bit about what the response of the Trump administration was on learning that. In an undercover operation last year, the FBI recorded Tom Homan, now the White House border czar, accepting $50,000 in cash after indicating he could help the agents who were posing as business executives win government contracts in a second Trump administration, according to multiple people familiar with the probe and internal documents reviewed. So this was a sting. The FBI had agents posing as business executives saying, hey, we're going to want some government contracts in a second Trump administration. Can you help us do that? Yeah. Sure. When Trump gets in office, we can definitely give you those contracts. Give me $50,000. Here's the money in a bag. Take it. It's yours. They've recorded that $50,000 cash. It's recorded. Dead to rights. The FBI and DOJ planned to wait to see whether Homan would deliver on his alleged promise once he became the nation's top immigration official. But the case indefinitely stalled soon after Trump became president in January, according to 6 sources familiar with the matter. In recent weeks, Trump appointees officially closed the investigation after FBI Director Kash Patel requested a status update on the case, two of the people said. It's unclear what reasons FBI and DOJ officials gave for shutting down the investigation, but a Trump Justice Department appointee called the case a deep state probe in early 2025, and no further investigative steps were taken, the sources say. So now these fucking influencers, they're trying to gaslight you, say, who cares about this? Who cares about it? Literal corruption? Literal conspiracy to do bribery? Now, at the time he took the money, he was not yet an official. But that doesn't mean, A, that it's not a conspiracy, and B, that he wouldn't have been making good on that promise after he became an official. And there are other crimes that are implicated. I'll read on. The federal investigation was launched in Western Texas in the summer of 2024 after a subject in a separate investigation claimed Homan was soliciting payments in exchange for awarding contracts should Trump win the presidential election, according to an internal Justice Department summary of the probe reviewed by MSNBC and people familiar with the case. So someone comes to the Department of Justice like, hey, this guy's like promising contracts. He's promising contracts in exchange for political favors and money, personal money for himself. You want to take a look at this? The U.S. Attorney's Office in the Western District of Texas, working with the FBI, asked the DOJ's Public Integrity Section to join its ongoing probe into the border czar and former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement Tom Homan and others based on evidence of payment from FBI undercover agents in exchange for facilitating future contracts related to border enforcement. Homan, who served as acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement earlier in Trump's first term, openly claimed during the 2024 campaign that he would play a prominent role in carrying out Trump's promised mass deportations. Asked for comment about MSNBC's exclusive reporting, the White House, the Justice Department, and the FBI dismissed the investigation as politically motivated and baseless. Baseless, they have him receiving $50,000 cash. Does that sound like a legitimate transaction? How many legitimate transactions that you're aware of involve $50,000 of cold hard cash in a bag in exchange for future contracts related to government work? Does that sound like a legitimate transaction to you? And what the DOJ says under Trump is, no. Us stopping that case, Homan acting that way, that's not the corruption. The politically motivated shit isn't what we're doing or what Homan did. It's that we launched an investigation in the first place. This is what we mean by crime is legal now. In a statement provided to MSNBC, FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy AG Todd Blanche, the Deputy AG who had a meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Trump's former personal attorney, who he appointed as Deputy AG. And it's no surprise why. I mean, he treats the Department of Justice like his personal law firm. This is another example of it. They're not going to use or enforce federal crimes against any of their friends. There will not be an honest case that comes out of the DOJ that will target a Republican with whom Trump is on good terms. There will not. Bet on that. We have never seen such corruption. There were even such cases in Trump's first term. But we have never seen the level of corruption that we are seeing now. I would argue in all of American history. The corruption in the DOJ as it currently is has never been worse. So this joint statement from these douchebags says, this matter originated under the previous administration and was subjected to a full review by the FBI and Justice Department prosecutors. They found no credible evidence of any criminal wrongdoing. Lol. The department's resources must remain focused on real threats to the American people, not baseless investigations. As a result, baseless. Even the most sycophantic among you, the most Trump dick suckers among you, would you say that this investigation was baseless? That we should never have investigated Tom Homan taking $50,000 in cash money, putting it in a bag, and promising to award government contracts in response? Isn't that like the direct definition? If once he obtains that power, if he were to do that, that would be bribery, and that's a meeting of the minds, a conspiracy of bribery. Would there be a more clear-cut case of corruption, of public corruption, than that? We should not investigate that. Even the biggest Trump sycophants among you, you would say that the investigation is baseless to even look into this shit? Come on, dude. Do you have any morals? Do you have any decency? Do you have any principles other than promote Trump, promote MAGA? Anything? Look in your heart, man. This is insane. This is the FBI who was in a screaming match Did you see his notes, by the way? His notes were like, get into a fight with one of these members. He's like, he has a mantra of like, fuck with the Democrats on his notes, scribbled there. He's getting into screaming matches in these hearings with his Liverpool tie after he tweets from the bathroom, hey, we got the guy. Oh, wait, we didn't. Whatever. He's tweeting at Democratic members, fighting with them on policy. That's the FBI director. Rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla. Dude, this guy is a clown. A total clown. And these people don't have hearts. If you can look at this, if you can see this, it's the same thing with the Kimmel stuff, which we're not going to forget, by the way. We're not going to forget about the First Amendment. I'm trying to channel my inner Rob Noor. We're never going to forget what happened. We're not going to forget about the First Amendment. But if you can look at this and be like, yeah, baseless witch hunt. Baseless witch hunt to look into a guy who's taking $50,000 in cash money in exchange for government contracts directly. This is, by the way, also the tenor of the accusation against Hunter Biden. What is the tenor of the accusation against Hunter Biden? It's like, you used your connections to have favorable relations with the Obama administration in terms of policy. Here, it's like even more directly for the financial interests of the organization as accused, which is these actual fake people, right? Actual agents. Here, it's like not even just foreign policy or something, or it's government contracts. So even accepting their bizarre, twisted fact pattern about Burisma, much of which is unsubstantiated, untrue, at least in terms of the actual allegation that any concession was in fact extracted, or that Hunter Biden attempted to do such with Joe Biden, then the vice president, or Obama. At worst, they have Hunter Biden like recommending a lobbyist, Blue Star Strategy. And then Blue Star Strategies had on the record meetings with the Department of Justice, a few members. Or the State Department, I don't remember. But even accepted the twisted logic, the twisted facts, the outright distortions and lies of the Trump propagandists vis-a-vis Burisma. This is the kind of shit that they were talking about, right? Using nepotism, political connections for personal corporate advantage, personal and or corporate advantage. God damn. There is no honor among these people. Like zero. They don't have a soul. That's what I'm saying. They don't have a soul. Looking at their hearts, they have no soul. They have no heart. They have nothing. As a result, the investigation has been closed. The Deputy Press Secretary, Abigail Jackson, slammed the probe as a blatantly political investigation. How? Which found no evidence of illegal activity, is yet another example of how the Biden DOJ was using its resources to target Trump's allies rather than investigate real criminals and the millions of illegal aliens. So now the official line from the White House is that the investigation is the evidence of corruption. The fact that we would investigate this shows, why would we investigate this kind of public corruption? You should be worried about the real criminals. Well, he's a real criminal. Homan is a real criminal. Tom Homan has not been involved with any contract award decisions. He's a career law enforcement officer, I'm sure, yeah, and lifelong public servant who's doing a phenomenal job on behalf of President Trump and the country. She added on behalf of Homan, a senior White House employee. Homan did not reply to requests for comment. Undercover FBI agents posing as contractors communicated and met several times last summer with a business colleague who introduced them to Homan, and with Homan himself, who indicated he would facilitate securing contracts for them in exchange for money once he was in office, according to documents and the people familiar with the case. On September 20th, 2024, with hidden cameras recording the scenes at a meeting spot in Texas, Homan accepted $50,000 in bills. They have him on tape accepting the bills. And what Trump says, yup, a legitimate transaction. This is not even problematic. It would be baseless to even look into this. FBI agents at the DOJ took no further investigative steps in the final months of 2024. The people said and expected to keep monitoring him to see if he landed an official role and would make good on steering. So they're like, okay, we're waiting. We're going to see if he makes any moves so that we can really nail him. At this point, I think that there's probably already a crime. Whether or not you could charge him with the completed act of bribery because he's not yet an official is unclear, but I'm sure that there's some theory of conspiracy or some theory of fraud that this must entail. That conspiring to use public contracts this way, I'm sure is a self-standing crime. Oh yeah, please like the stream if you don't mind. It really helps. When special agents in Texas began probing the subject's claim that Homan was soliciting bribes, the White House border czar was president and owner of a private consulting business that said it could help companies in the border security industry win government contracts. So he was going around saying, yeah, I'll help you with contracts. Homan often accompanied Trump on the campaign trail. Trump comes back in January. I'll be on his heels coming back, and I will run the biggest deportation operation this country's ever seen. So that's showing that Homan was part of the campaign while he was making these secret promises. Why isn't YouTube chat on the screen? I'm working on getting this accomplished. So YouTube chat, stay tuned. I need to have the Twitch chat be separate. They don't want me to commingle the Twitch chat and the other chats. So what I'll try to do is tonight or tomorrow, find a way to split the chats so that you can see the YouTube chat on half and then the Twitch chat on the other half. Would you guys like that? I also agree with Finian here. Finian, who says the pardon needs to be removed from the president and given to the Supreme Court. I don't know that it needs to be given to the Supreme Court. Maybe if I had to pick, it probably would be give it to, I don't know, some congressional, to Congress with like Supreme Court oversight or something, or just take the power fucking away. I'm not sure if I believe it should be, but like the president should basically have no role in my mind. I'm not even super convinced that the president should have a role here. Maybe have a whole new branch of government deal with specifically pardons, if there should even be such things. But yeah, thank you guys for the support. Thank you for the subs, the super chats, all that stuff. It really makes a difference. And yeah, we've been seeing really great positive growth numbers lately. And I think that's in part due to you guys. Follow me on Substack. Follow me on, what are my other things? Oh my God, brain fart. TikTok, Instagram. Do it. Several FBI and justice officials believe that they had strong criminal cases against Homan for conspiracy to commit bribery based on recording him accepting cash and his apparent promise to assist with contracts, according to 4 people familiar with the probe. Homan could have been charged with a crime then, legal experts say, but the case was unusual. He was not a public official, and Trump was not president at the time. He accepted money in the FBI's undercover sting, so his actions didn't clearly fit under a standard bribery charge, right? So understand the difference here. Conspiracy to commit bribery and bribery itself. So it might have been impossible to charge him with bribery itself, but you might have been able to charge him with conspiracy. And I'm sure there's another crime here of like conspiring to use public contracts or something, or fraud. 2 officials privately debated the possible charges given Homan's status at the time. Excuse me. But several concluded it would be better for the investigation to continue to monitor his actions once he was back in office. This was a bit optimistic that you would be able to charge a friend of Trump's in Trump term 2. Some members of the DOJ, maybe some career officials, weren't reading the room really and weren't listening to Kamala Harris when she asked the obvious question, imagine Donald Trump with no guardrails. So in retrospect, this thought process, hey, maybe we'll just wait to see what he does during the Trump administration. Maybe he'll do something even more corrupt during the Trump administration that we can follow up on and even have a stronger case of bribery, not just the conspiracy or other charges. Oh, that was a bit optimistic that you would even have the chance to do this. According to a document reviewed by MSNBC, justice officials were eyeing 4 potential criminal charges: conspiracy, bribery, and 2 kinds of fraud. MSNBC asked legal experts about a hypothetical situation similar to the Homan probe. They said a person who promises to influence federal contracts when they become a public official can't be charged under the federal bribery statutes until they are named or appointed to such a post. Again, that's bribery as such, not necessarily conspiracy. If the person didn't get the administration job and then reaffirmed his promise or communicated in some way about his plan to deliver on his agreement, investigators could make a strong bribery case. It is still a crime, however, for anyone to seek money to improperly influence federal contracts, the legal expert said, whether they're a public official or not, and whether they ever delivered on that promise or not. People in this category could be charged with conspiracy or fraud. It's so obvious, guys. Like, you don't give and accept $50,000 in bills for government contracts as part of a legitimate transaction. You guys wouldn't even necessarily need to know the ins and outs of the law to know that that is fucked up, right? To know that that seems illegitimate. They have them on tape doing it. And the reason is because, of course, this kind of public corruption has been criminalized by Congress. If someone who is not yet a public official but expects to be takes bribes in exchange for agreeing to take official acts after they are appointed, they can't be charged with bribery, said Randall Ellison, the former chief of public corruption prosecutions in the U.S. Attorney's Office and former white-collar law professor. But they can be charged with conspiracy to commit bribery. In a conspiracy charge, the crime is the agreement to commit a criminal act in the future, right? So it would be so, like, can you imagine what the world would be like if you do all of your bribery right before you get office? So we do all this, right? So, no, of course you can charge a conspiracy, a meeting of the minds. On November 11th, Trump announced he would make Homan his border czar, a White House advisor role, which, unlike the job of the director of ICE, did not require Senate confirmation or an extensive FBI background check. Several FBI and Justice Department officials believe Homan's acceptance of the cash provided strong evidence that they should continue to pursue after Homan took public office. The Public Integrity Section is a squad of seasoned public corruptors, prosecutors typically assigned to sensitive cases involving election and other high-profile figures, agreed to join the case in late November 2024. Very optimistic. Shortly after Trump's inauguration, however, in either late January or February 2025, former acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, who has just been appointed to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, this guy is a judge now. Emil Bove, the guy involved in the Mayor Eric Adams corruption scandal, the guy involved in the let's not listen to the courts on Kilmar, on these other immigration cases, that guy, he was the guy who said he didn't support this case, and he has now been appointed to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals by Trump. He is now a judge. So Bove was briefed on the case. And by the way, fuck Emil Bove. Can I just say that unequivocally? That if the Democrats take power, if it were possible, if we had the numbers, in my opinion, Bove should be impeached and removed for abuse of power and corruption from his office and post as a judge. He then should be prosecuted. Around the same time, the Public Integrity Section was battling with Bove over his demand that they dismiss a bribery case against New York Mayor Eric Adams. The section supervisors who would resign one by one in February, this is the Public Integrity Section that I mentioned before. These are the people who in charge of a lot of these sensitive investigations. They had assigned a top supervisor to help oversee the Homan case with federal prosecutors, where the investigation began. Homan had spent 3 decades in federal border protection and immigration enforcement, a former police officer from upstate New York. What is it about these New York people, huh? Giuliani, Trump, Homan. He started work as a border patrol agent in the 80s, later was promoted. In 2013, Obama elevated him to head of the ICE deportation branch. When Trump was first elected, he appointed Homan as acting head of ICE. He had a zero-tolerance policy for immigrants seeking to cross the border. He was involved in the family separation policy. Homan's nomination to become the permanent ICE director stalled in the Senate amid widespread criticism over the administration's family separation policies. After his lengthy career in government service, he announced he would retire. He launched his consulting firm. And when he was prepping to run for president again, Homan remained close to Trump. He worked as a Fox News contributor, and he contributed to Project 2025. When Homan became Trump's top border official in 2025, his consulting work and financial ties to border security and immigration contractors spurred questions from Democrats in Congress about conflicts of interest. Many expected Homan, a trusted Trump ally, to serve if Trump were reelected in 2024. In a December 2023 interview on the slain conservative activists' eponymous podcast, The Charlie Kirk Show, Homan promised to be pushing a robust removal of immigrants when elected. After Trump was elected a second time, amid questions about Homan's financial relationships with clients who sought work related to the border, Homan said he had no conflicts and would take steps to prevent one. He said he was shutting down his consulting business and would remove himself from discussions of specific contracts to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest. As border czar, you are uniquely positioned to help your former business client reap a huge windfall, said Jamie Raskin. Asked about a hypothetical situation of a person promising help with contracts once they get into public office, Ellison said federal law makes it a crime to strike a corrupt agreement to help influence government contracts and decisions, no matter the identity of the person or whether they succeed. He said a person who is not a public official yet, but promises to exert influence improperly when they get a job and accepts or solicits money to do so, can be charged with conspiracy. He points to the Reagan-era bribery scandal involving the now-defunct defense contractor WedTech, and on and on and on. Yeah, so it's a crime. So, what do we do, folks? What's to be done? Well, I would argue you add this to the laundry list of corruption in your repertoire if you're talking to your friends and family. This guy's literally accepting tens of thousands of dollars in bills to award contracts. You add it to your fight on the info wars. But just let it narrow your focus about what we're fighting against. We are fighting against absolute criminality, the destruction of our country, the most corrupt elements of society. The scum of the earth are running the country. That should motivate you, right? That should motivate you to vote. That should motivate you to campaign. That should motivate you every day to sub to the fucking channel, because we're going to stand on business every day and call this shit out. And I want you in your private lives to talk to people you know. You okay with this? And it relates to this abuse of power of Trump. And in a second, we'll hear from Noah Feldman about why abuse of power is an impeachable offense. It relates to it because it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of creating a state of fear and oligarchy, a set of ruling elites who are able to use the public trust for their own benefit and to entrench themselves in office. And it works both when the government is acting as enforcer. So when Trump says, go as political revenge after these people, use the enforcement power as intended to go after people. But it also works in the opposite. Don't go after these people that we like. Stop your investigations into our allies. Don't worry about whether these people take bribes. At this point, effectively, bribery is legal. If you're a Trump affiliate, bribery is legal. Trump himself is taking bribes right now. massive amounts of bribes. Massive amounts of bribes. So bribery is effectively legal if you're a Trump affiliate. Why is this impeachable? I have a video from Noah Feldman.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you.
And whenever someone, excuse me,
Thank you very much for.
whenever someone asks me about my standard for impeachment, I go back to this video and his statement in the first Trump impeachment. This is him describing why what Trump was doing with Zelensky in Ukraine in 2018, 2019, demanding investigations into the Bidens for political purposes. Recall, he was impeached for that conduct. Why it was impeachable. Not because the president of the United States doesn't have the ability to pressure foreign governments. Of course they can. Abuse of power is where you use a power that you unquestionably have for a private or personal motive and not for the public interest. That's abuse of power. And Noah Feldman, I think, describes it very well in this testimony. It's about 10 or so minutes, but it'll be less than that because it's on 1.25, but I think it's worth listening to.
For the opportunity to appear. My name is Noah Feldman. I serve as the
Witness will proceed.
I serve as the Felix Frankfurter Professor of Law at the Harvard Law School.
I seek recognition
My
for
job
privilege
is to
motion.
study.
The gentleman
Oh, I
will
forgot about
suspend.
this.
Time is the witnesses.
The privilege motion needs to be recognized.
Privilege,
You can call it not a privilege.
in
but you need to be
between the
recognized.
witnesses, it may be recognized. Not once I recognize the witness.
So-
The witness will proceed.
This is Jerry Nadler. He's retiring from Congress.
Will
And
entertain
he has endorsed Mamdani, by the way.
the motion after the first witness.
My job is to study and to teach the Constitution from its origins until the present. I'm here today to describe three things. Why the framers of our Constitution included a provision for the impeachment of the president. What that provision, providing for impeachment for high crimes and misdemeanors, means. And last, how it applies to the question before you and before the American people, whether President Trump has committed impeachable offenses under the Constitution. Let me begin by stating my conclusions. The framers provided for the impeachment of the president because they feared that the president might abuse the power of his office for personal benefit, to corrupt the electoral process and ensure his re-election, or to subvert the national security of the United States. High crimes and misdemeanors are abuses of power and of public trust connected to the office of the presidency. On the basis of the testimony and the evidence before the House, President Trump has committed impeachable high crimes and misdemeanors by corruptly abusing the office of the presidency. Specifically, President Trump has abused his office by corruptly soliciting President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine to announce investigations of his political rivals in order to gain personal advantage, including in the 2020 presidential election. Let me begin now with the question of why the framers provided for impeachment in the first place. The framers borrowed the concept of impeachment from England, but with one enormous difference. The House of Commons and the House of Lords could use impeachment in order to limit the ministers of the king, but they could not impeach the king, and in that sense, the king was above the law. In stark contrast, the framers, from the very outset of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, made it crystal clear that the president would be subject to impeachment in order to demonstrate that the president was subordinate to the law. If you will, I would like you to think now about a specific date in the Constitutional Convention, July 20th, 1787. It was the middle of a long, hot summer, and on that day, two members of the Constitutional Convention actually moved to take out the impeachment provision from the draft Constitution. And they had a reason for that, and their reason was, they said, well, the president will have to stand for re-election. And if the president has to stand for re-election, that is enough. We don't need a separate provision for impeachment. When that proposal was made, significant disagreement ensued. The governor of North Carolina, a man called William Davie, immediately said, if the president cannot be impeached, quote, he will spare no efforts or means whatever to get himself re-elected. Following Davie, George Mason of Virginia, a fierce Republican critic of executive power, said, no point is more important than that impeachment be included in the Constitution. Shall any man be above justice, he asked, thus expressing the core concern that the president must be subordinate to the law and not above the law. James Madison, the principal draftsman of the U.S. Constitution, then spoke up. He said it was, quote, indispensable that some provision be made for impeachment. Why? Because, he explained, standing for re-election was, quote, not a sufficient security, close quote, against presidential misconduct or corruption. A president, he said, might betray his trust to foreign powers. A president who, in a corrupt fashion, abused the office of the presidency, said James Madison, quote, might be fatal to the republic, close.
So this is really important. Thank you so much for the membership from Bad Enchilada, who says, when the Supreme Court references people, how do we know they're not referencing corporations? According to them, corporations are people. I don't know that that's a proper distillation of what the Supreme Court precedent is there. Corporations have certain rights, for sure, under the Supreme Court's case law, but they've never said that corporations are human beings. And it's not the case that they consider corporations as human beings, as in persons alive. The U.S. law does sometimes define persons in their statutes as including U.S. corporations. But that's just like acts of Congress defining things. So people will often say that, but I don't think that they're capturing what the Supreme Court has meant before. Yes, corporations and associations have First Amendment rights, but it doesn't mean that they literally think the Supreme Court has said, for example, that corporations are in fact people.
Of the presidency,
though
said
our
James
laws
Madison,
will sometimes refer to persons as including corporations, but that's just our laws. That laws that create definitions that say, for example, we define person as to include human alive, like born alive people, and also corporations.
president who, in a corrupt fashion,
Sorry, to what Noah just said there, by the way, that specifically one of the main concerns about why we need impeachment, and in addition to just having regular elections, is where we're scared that the president is going to use his powers to entrench himself in office. So one of the principal reasons we need impeachment is to prevent the president from using his official powers for personal motivations or to entrench himself in power. That is one of the main reasons why we have the impeachment clause and why we can't just rely on regular elections.
abused the office of the presidency, said James Madison, quote, might be fatal to the republic, close quote. And then a remarkable thing happened in the convention. Gouverneur Morris of Pennsylvania, one of the two people who had introduced the motion to eliminate impeachment from the Constitution, got up and actually said the words, I was wrong. He told the other framers present that he had changed his mind on the basis of the debate on July 20th, and that it was now his opinion that in order to avoid corruption of the electoral process, a president would have to be subject to impeachment regardless of the availability of a further election. The upshot of this debate is that the framers kept impeachment in the Constitution, specifically in order to protect against the abuse of office with a capacity to corrupt the electoral process or lead to personal gain.
So in both of Trump's impeachments, where Republicans shamefully, though there were some defectors in both impeachments, but shamefully protected Trump, in both of his elections, what he was doing was at the core of impeachment. In the case of the 2019 impeachment vis-a-vis Zelensky, he was trying to use his powers to corrupt the 2020 election. And in the case of the insurrection impeachment, same thing. He was using his powers to incite an insurrection for the 2020 election. Those were at the core, the absolute core of what impeachment was designed for. I'll also throw a word to the 2016 election, where what was the New York charge related to in the case brought by Alvin Bragg? People will say, well, it was for the business falsification, the records falsification. Yes, but it's to cover up another crime, which is corrupting the 2016 election. So most of his criminal matters and the impeachments themselves have to do with Trump trying to corrupt the elections that he's been a party to. And abuse of power is at the center here. Why it's an impeachable offense is because the framers were worried that the president would use their powers to entrench themselves in office for personal motive.
Now, turning to the language of the Constitution, the framers used the words high crimes and misdemeanors to describe those forms of action that they considered impeachable. These were not vague or abstract terms to the framers. High crimes and misdemeanors were the words high crimes and misdemeanors represented very specific language that was well understood by the entire generation of the framers. Indeed, they were borrowed from an impeachment trial in England that was taking place as the framers were speaking, which was referred to, in fact, by George Mason. The words high crimes and misdemeanors refer to abuse of the office of the presidency for personal advantage, or to corrupt the electoral process, or to subvert the national security of the United States. There's no mystery about the words high crimes and misdemeanors. The word high modifies both crimes and misdemeanors, so they're both high. And high means connected to the office of the presidency, connected to office. The classic form that was familiar to the framers was the abuse of office for personal gain or advantage. And when the framers specifically named bribery as a high crime and misdemeanor, they were naming one particular version of this abuse of office, the abuse of office for personal or individual gain.
Right? Which is at the core of what Homan and Trump are doing now. They're abusing, like, bribery is a type of high crime or misdemeanor. A high crime or a high misdemeanor. Bribery is a type of that. Why is it a type of that? You're using your power for personal benefit to yourself in exchange for some benefit, right? So that is core to what corruption meant to the framers. That's core to what the impeachment clause was for, is for these kinds of acts.
The other forms of abuse of office to affect elections, and abuse of office to compromise national security were further forms that were familiar to the framers. Now, how does this language of high crimes and misdemeanors apply to President Trump's alleged conduct? Let me be clear. The Constitution gives the House of Representatives, that is, the members of this committee and the other members of the House, quote, sole power of impeachment. It's not my responsibility or my job to determine the credibility of the witnesses who appeared before the House thus far. That is your constitutional responsibility. My comments will, therefore, follow my role, which is to describe and apply the meaning of impeachable offenses to the facts described by the testimony and evidence before the House. President Trump's conduct, as described in the testimony and evidence, clearly constitutes impeachable high crimes and misdemeanors under the Constitution. In particular, the memorandum and other testimony relating to the July 25th, 2019 phone call between the two presidents, President Trump and President Zelensky, more than sufficiently indicates that President Trump abused his office by soliciting the president of Ukraine to investigate his political rivals in order to gain personal political advantage, including in relation to the 2020 election. Again, the words abuse of office are not mystical or magical. They are very clear. The abuse of office occurs when the president uses a feature of his power, the awesome power of his office, not to serve the interests of the American public, but to serve his personal, individual, partisan, electoral interests. That is what the evidence before the House indicates. Finally, let me be clear that on its own, soliciting the leader of a foreign government in order to announce investigations of political rivals and perform those investigations would constitute a high crime and misdemeanor. But the House also has evidence before it that the president committed two further acts that also qualify as high crimes and misdemeanors. In particular, the House heard evidence that the president placed a hold on critical U.S. aid to Ukraine and conditioned its release on announcement of the investigations of the Bidens and of the discredited CrowdStrike conspiracy theory. Furthermore, the House also heard evidence that the president conditioned a White House visit desperately sought by the Ukrainian president on announcement of the investigations. Both of these acts constitute impeachable high crimes and misdemeanors under the Constitution. They each encapsulate the framers' worry that the President of the United States would take any means whatever to ensure his reelection. And that is the reason that the framers provided for impeachment in a case like this one.
And it's no different here. It's worse here, right? What's going on here is worse than in 2019. This shit is worse than the Zelensky stuff. And it is more undeniable. Very rarely, right, would you think that an aspiring corrupt public official is going to go out and say, I am corrupt, I am corrupt, I am corrupt. That is exactly what the fuck Trump is doing. He is putting out in words and stating, yes, I want you to use an aspect of my public power, that is the enforcement power of the United States, and I'm ordering you, Pam Bondi, to get some shit done so that you can start these mortgage fraud or whatever cases, these bullshit cases, against my political enemies because of political reasons, because I was impeached, because I was indicted. In other words, because of reasons having nothing to do with the interests of the United States or the reasons why these, like, mortgage fraud statutes perhaps were passed. That's not why you're going after them. You're going after them because they impeached me and because they indicted me, even though these people weren't the ones who did that, right? Letitia James didn't do that. Comey didn't do that. Schiff arguably impeached, right? But if you take that, right, like, it's an acceptable motivation. Acceptable here, I mean, a non-impeachable motivation to use the Department of Justice as revenge for political grievances like impeachment. If you believe that that's appropriate, you are lost. You don't even believe in your country. That's where we're at, folks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now's the time where I suggest to you, if anyone disagrees, if we have disagreeers in the chat, specifically on the issues we spoke about, now's the time to raise your objections. Pisco, wouldn't Congress's ability to investigate abuse of power disprove that separation of powers is what precludes it from probing? Yeah, this was my point, Oliver, in the debate I had with Ryan Mullally that people weren't kind of getting. My point was that the decision, one of the reasons it's bad is because obviously Congress is able to look into the use of authorities using their impeachment power. So you can't hermetically seal these authorities such that Congress can't inquire into them, right? Congress is looking into the use of official power by virtue of their impeachment inquiries. But by its terms, the opinion that is Trump versus United States doesn't, like, say Congress only in its legislative role can't look into the official use of their power. It says Congress, full stop, can't inquire as to the motives of the president using their official powers. So this is what I was trying to bring up in the context of that Ryan Mullally discussion that I think he and frankly the judges were missing, is that if you accept that Congress is able to inquire as to the motivations of the president using the impeachment power, then the same kind of, like, policy argument that's being given that, like, the president must be free to have a vigorous executive and that's why he should be free from any criminal inquiry and Congress can't touch that power, that all falls apart if impeachment is a category of its own and you are able to do it in the context of impeachment. Or you can take the view of, like, someone like Alan Dershowitz, which is like, no, you can't impeach abuse of power. It doesn't make any sense. And I guess what is left to impeach about? What could you possibly impeach for? At that point, I don't even know. So it's a good point, good question. Can you clarify if abuse of power requires that the accused have committed an officially established crime? No, right? So I take a crime to be breaking the law. An abuse of power happens in the case where you specifically are using one of your powers, right? Like, you're using a power that you have. In order to abuse a power, you have to have a power. And so I don't think, now, the way I'm answering the question is kind of incorporated in the Trump versus United States theory, right? Which seems to suggest that you can't criminalize official powers of the president. So I would say that there are some uses of official power that are crimes, but the Supreme Court has at least put a lot of doubt of that notion. But I would suggest to you that the main kinds of abusive powers that we're talking about are areas in which the president unquestionably has the power, including, by the way, I would say for pardons. This is why I say that Biden's pardoning of his son is impeachable, because I believe it to be an abuse of power. So now you can start to see about why I come to these positions. Is abuse of power relates to powers you unquestionably have. What do you mean, how is the abuse of power determined? I need to know what you mean by that question. This is a test of Congress. If Congress does nothing, I don't see how the next election isn't going to be interfered with. I hate to tell you this, Dave, but Congress is not going to act to impeach Trump over this. I'll just tell you nothing will come of this from the Republicans in Congress. It's up to you. It's up to you to do everything in your power within the legal and political system of the United States to get Democrats in power and Republicans out of power this November, next November, and all subsequent Novembers. But I need to know what you mean. Sorry, I was talking to Exel. How is it determined? I mean, legislation for a crime normally has something specific meaning that we understand to be the crime. Abuse of power does it does. So here's the. Are you saying that you don't understand the term abuse of power? Are you saying that you don't understand the definition of abuse of power? I need to understand what you're saying. I don't know what you're saying. Oh, yeah. So it's the same thing for like the term insurrection or the term freedom of speech or due process. These terms have meanings to the framers. You look to history to see what they meant by these terms, and then you derive the elements from that, right? An abuse of office is using the office of the presidency. So do we have a usage of the office of the presidency? And then you have this mens rea element or specific intent element, right? You use the power for X purpose. I don't know if you would formalize this as 2 or 3 elements, but it's not written out necessarily in the U.S. code as a crime, but these terms, high crime and misdemeanor, just because it doesn't list out the elements in element form doesn't mean that there's not a specific meaning. I just pointed to a specific meaning. So if you don't understand that, or you don't know where it's derived from the history and what the framers meant by these terms. What page are you looking at for these meanings? When you say what page, what are you talking about? Page of the testimony? Like on the screen, page 4. You can also control F some words that you see on the screen and it'll get you there. This is from Noah Feldman's testimony. But there's other scholarly accounts of abuse of power as well that you could take a look at. But don't ever let this kind of like, what does it mean? What does it mean with like, what is it just subjective? No, just breathe and realize that these terms meant something to the people who wrote them down, and they surely have to mean something. No, the meaning is not defined by Congress, in my opinion. This is the problem, right? Like, basically you're suggesting that it would be that, yes, Congress has the power to adjudicate this, but it would not be constitutional for Congress to be like, well, I think abuse of power or high crime or misdemeanor means 4. Or high crime misdemeanor means when you are over 38 years old. So yes, Congress ultimately has the power to decide any particular, if they're going to impeach or if they're going to, convict, right? But you wouldn't say that it's constitutional for Congress to interpret it however they want. This is what I was trying to push Ryan on the other day. It would not be a constitutional interpretation of the impeachment clause to say, we're impeaching you because we don't like you. That would not be constitutional. Now, I understand in terms of who has the power that Congress could do that, in that they have the power to render that decision and effectuate the removal. But that doesn't mean that it would be constitutional to do, right? Just like the Supreme Court could gavel in and say, the president's in charge of everything. He is the God King. They technically have the power to issue that ruling, but that doesn't mean it would be that the ruling itself would be constitutionally sound. That you would have to agree that it's constitutional. So this is the big problem. People will say, oh, just because it's impeachment doesn't mean that we have to consider the Constitution and its history. No, of course you do. All we're doing with impeachment is we're moving this from the courts, the Article 3 courts, to Congress. But it doesn't mean that Congress doesn't have a self-standing obligation to examine and understand the meaning of the terms of the Constitution. Do you get me? So just because it's Congress's responsibility doesn't mean that Congress doesn't have a self-standing obligation to consider the Constitution. Same thing, by the way, when they pass legislation. Congress has an obligation to pass constitutional legislation. If Congress attempts to pass legislation that is unconstitutional, then I take that to be an unconstitutional thing, right? You don't just say, well, Congress decides. Well, in that case, yeah, you obviously have judicial review, and you wouldn't have judicial review over the impeachments. That just is a separate breakdown in the who decides question. But I want to be very clear about what this guy is saying. You should not listen to this person. Very stupid thing to say, Newspin. Don't ever believe this. The who decides question is a separate question from what is the answer. The who decides question and what is the answer are separate questions. At some level of, maybe it's tautological, right? That Congress decides what the answer is, but really, it should say, what is the right answer, right? What is the correct answer? By correct, we mean relative to a standard. Does it align with a standard? The standard here being constitutional. These are separate things. Who decides what is the right answer? So just because Congress decides that they want to impeach someone because they made a funny little balloon animal doesn't mean that is the correct interpretation of the impeachment clause in the Constitution. So don't get into this whole thing about oh, it's just political. Political means you can do whatever you want. Yeah, don't listen to Kurt. Don't listen to this dude. He says wild shit. The state of legal YouTube is not good. Don't just repeat what this guy says. What's his channel's name? Uncivil Law. Don't repeat this guy's arguments. LawTube is not sending their best. And don't conflate these questions. It triggers me. People will just say, well, Congress is political, so no, of course not. Of course, and even the Republicans understood this when they were making their arguments on the second impeachment. Mitch McConnell's argument was, now I think he was incorrect about this argument, but his argument was that it's unconstitutional to adjudicate an impeachment after someone has left office. I disagree with that. But Mitch McConnell understood that there's a self-standing obligation to follow the Constitution even when Congress is exercising its impeachment power. there is such a thing as an unconstitutional impeachment, both procedurally, obviously, which courts probably would review, but also substantively. There is unconstitutional impeachments. Just because this House of Representatives has the sole power of impeachment doesn't mean that what they do can't violate the Constitution. It just means that no one else can tell them that and have binding force. That the Supreme Court won't be able to say the House was wrong. But that doesn't mean that the House was right. So please do separate these notions in your head. The who decides question and the what is the right answer question. Very, very different. Very different. This is an epic scandal. It is an epic scandal. It is worse than the Epstein file stuff by 1,000,000,000,000%. That's maybe too much. It's worse by 20 times the Epstein files scandal. It should be covered, if we cared about our institutions, if we cared about our country, way more than the Epstein files. This is Banana Republic shit. This is some shit you find in fucking Hungary. This is some shit you find in Russia. That's what this shit is. This ain't America. This is way worse than any individual person's assassination. This is using government power to infringe on civil liberties and institute authoritarian government that thousands of Americans have died to preserve. And so I ask if anyone disagrees with that notion or anything else I said on the stream to join the disagreements. I see someone disagreement. If this is not a real disagreement, David, you're in trouble. Yo, what up, David?
Oh,
What's
can you
good?
hear
Yeah, what's your disagreement?
it's not a disagreement. I want to ask a question. What do you envision as like a really good plan for the next Democratic leader nominee? Let's say, we successfully are like mobilizing, we're getting a lot of electoral wins. Maybe we even get a trifecta or something. We do all the stuff we want, and we want to head off at the pass this from happening again, this from devolving again. Are we talking constitutional amendments? How do we change this from just boiling over again?
Yeah, I think that there's a people problem. I mean this seriously. Like, the people that have made up the MAGA elites, the individuals who make up their leaders, there's a people problem. And it's hard for me to see any system that's run by such corrupt and evil individuals, and I do think that's true. And by evil here, I mean, like, they don't care about our Constitution, they don't care about our system, that it's kind of hard to see how any system can thrive when the leaders of that party are so corrupt, frankly, and so willing to abide by authoritarianism. And so the kind of changes that I would be looking to have are structural in nature, in that I think that we should try to limit partisan gerrymandering across the country, which I think has a tendency to distill the most unhinged type representatives at times, and to give people incredibly safe seats and have no fear and no like real challenges. I think that we need to institute some form of ranked choice voting across the country for congressional elections. I think that it's important to extend sovereignty, or I should say popular sovereignty, the franchise in all its respects, to DC, and to extend that to also to Puerto Rico and some of these other territories with major populations. I think you need massive court reform. I think that you need, if I had it my way, I think that there should be more popular representation, greater amount of members of representatives, get rid of the impeachment power. That would require a constitutional amendment.
And what about the guardrails?
Yeah.
What about rules for violating norms, or not getting rid of the norms and making it actual like offenses or something? Rules, making it so like stuff like this just can't happen.
So I'm never going to support an abuse of power, because I think that that's an anathema to the point of the Constitution. And so I'm not going to support, I'm not like these fucking losers like Rob Noor. I'm not going to support things like political witch hunts. Okay. I'm not going to support like Democrat corruption. That I'm not going to support that, but I would support us to create a commission to investigate all of the abuses of the Trump second term. I would be in favor, if it were possible, it's not going to be possible, to have a constitutional amendment to undo every single one of Trump's pardons.
Hell yeah.
I would be in favor of that, and to reinstate any convictions made thereunder, under that were previously vacated. I would make, if I had the power, I would pass an amendment to do that, to undo all of them and make everyone who was convicted serve their term, and to open up potential criminal liability to everyone, and to extend statute of limitations for the duration of the respective terms. So I would be in favor of a lot of radical stuff on that regard,
Okay.
but it wouldn't be on a political basis. It would be specifically to, guard the country. And I'll be following the facts and the law.
Okay, so from
That's never
Like,
going to
let's,
happen, though. Just to be clear, that's never going to happen. I'm not even sure Democrats should run on it. I'm just telling you, like, if I had the power, I
that
would do
was
that.
going to be my next question. Was like, what is a realistic path to some of this? Because like I can imagine someone like Newsom running on this being part of the platform. Is that like part of the campaign is a promise for a truth and reconciliation thing, that we're going to bring America back to lawless, to to the lawfulness, and blah blah blah, and getting at least some support from at least the left and like the people like us. I don't know how salient that would be. I think that like you could make this a much bigger thing, but it wouldn't really be up to him. It would have to be how like the media presents him and presents the lawlessness of this current administration, and like making this a serious issue. Like there's no one like Alex Jones of the left who's like screaming bloody murder. There's no Rob Noor who's saying like crying because of how lawless this all is. So like I feel like people aren't taking it as seriously. But like would you want someone to try to push that as part of their campaign, or do you think politically it's just not there?
I'm not sure. I'm not a pollster, so I'm not sure what best. I think that Ossoff kind of runs a good line there about.
Yeah, I love his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that speech that he gave, where he was drawing that line, I think is probably effective. I'm not sure what's going to be best for everyone's individual campaign. I'm not. I'm just to be honest about that. In terms of what we can actually do realistically to hold people accountable, it's going to be tough because they're just going to pardon each other as they're leaving office. So they've done a lot of damage. It was really important to prevent Trump from winning, and accountability for Trump, perhaps unless he like passes away or he resigns in favor of JD Vance. Let's say he has another stroke. I don't know that he had a stroke, but perhaps he did. Some people are saying he did. Who knows? But if he is like resigning, then you're going to have no accountability for Trump. Like Trump, at least there's maybe an argument that his criminal acts have been told by his time in office. He's never been pardoned. He can't pardon himself, would be the argument. But beyond Trump, my intuition is that they're going to just pardon everybody, and you're not going to get accountability. So I think it's going to be really tough legally, absent some limitation of the pardon power, or some constitutional amendment, really, frankly, to see criminal punishment, maybe some state crimes, which they can't pardon. I would be fully in favor of states investigating whether their own laws have been violated. But again, under the Trump versus United States decision and the theory of pretty wide, expansive federal authority that's been expounded by this court, very unlikely to see these people be held accountable. You just right now the goal is to stop the bleeding, and stopping the bleeding means kicking these people out.
My thought process in trying to imagine this stuff is that I wonder if this is the stuff we should already be planning on, because like there's the world where we don't stop the bleeding and everything goes to shit, but there's the world where we do stop the bleeding and we need to make it like a permanent like fixture, like fix it more than, because like after 2020 it seemed like we stopped the bleeding and then it got worse. So like that's another thing I'm like worried about, is like, okay, there could be the end of the Trump fiasco, the disaster that leads to more bad stuff, and I'm worried about it. The other thing
I think that the Democratic Party needs to. This is where I think the abundance shit is correct. They need to get results that Americans can feel very, 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 very quickly. And I don't know how that only can happen if Democrats win huge majorities in their elections. So. And if Democrats pursue policies that will make a difference fast, it needs to be really fast. Whatever they want to do, and it probably won't be this kind of revenge tour stuff, or this kind of like going after people to get justice. I wouldn't call it a revenge tour. I would call it justice for what occurred previously.
Lawful order, maintaining the order of the experiment.
Unfortunately, people don't have those kind of long-term structural concerns in mind. They care more about like tomorrow and how much does my food cost and shit like that. And so, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you want to say, before the Democrats can focus on these long-term structural concerns, they need to win massive elections to make massive changes in people's life very, 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 very quickly.
Last part was could a president or the Congress?
Can you pause real quick? Sorry, common good. I don't usually yell at you, but like, I never said that abundance is the only people who invented doing things fast, very efficiently, doing things quickly. This is one thing on the abundance stuff that I agree with. So me saying that I agree with someone on something doesn't mean that I think that they're the progenitors of doing things fast, quickly, and well. It doesn't mean that I'm just mean like that's a point of their book that I agree with. Not that I think that they deserve credit for the notion of doing things quickly. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm understood that when I say things, I'm saying that and nothing else. But I appreciate that. Sorry.
People don't want to give them at least any amount of credit for at least galvanizing some of these ideas into one phrase. It's useful, whatever. My question was, could Congress pass a constitutional amendment that takes effect after an amount of time? Like, I'm imagining, like, if you're the next Democratic leader, you're going to need to wield at least some executive power that that you have now, but you should try to reduce it. Probably. I mean, like, it seems just too easy to corrupt this thing at any given time, given how much executive power is in the president's hands. So whatever they do, they need to reel that back in. Could they pass an executive or a constitutional amendment that says, okay, you keep the executive power until this date, and then boom, that way they can't get undone by if they lose the midterms or whatever.
So I don't know. Can you ask your question more?
Yeah. So imagine they pass a constitutional amendment on the first day of the trifecta. And
we're not getting an amendment, all right? Maybe let's just move. Do you want to do the hypothetical anyway? Because the amendment, we need state legislatures.
I'm just curious if legally, if they could say that it can happen later. That
this is like I'm just saying this is LARP. Like, I gave you my answer if I had the power to do whatever I want. But it is a LARP to think about a constitutional amendment that would be so partisan as to negatively and specifically call out the corruption of one presidential term. I don't, and even though I don't think that partisanship is the motivation there, it's not going to happen. So if you want to ask me about reality, we can. But I answered your question as honestly as I could. But yeah, sorry.
I appreciate it. I just it's something I think about a lot, given that like I see like a Jeffries or the Democratic leadership, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just gonna fucking happen again. This is not the kind of. This isn't the reaction I'm expecting. Like, I hear Ossoff, I hear Newsom, and at least okay, they're on the right track. I want way more seriousness on this, but whatever.
Democrats need to deliver very quickly. They need to deliver very quickly, and they need to like broadcast their wins like no one's business. They need to just like have, because unfortunately now the job is 60% communicating your wins and only 40% achieving them. So I think that they need to achieve things very quickly.
You just take credit for other wins you didn't even get, like Trump.
Yeah, fair. I mean,
it might just be communication at this point.
Unfortunately, I think that there's a real chance that Trump causes a recession or some kind of economic woe. I mean, we're already seeing employment worrying numbers and worrying on inflation as well. And his numbers are
thing is insane.
Yeah,
they're shooting themselves in the foot. I don't know why they're even doing it.
So there might be another mess to clean up, and that might make things more difficult for Democrats. The Republicans take a shit, and Democrats clean it up, and they get blamed for having shit on their hands.
Every time.
Yeah. But thank you so much. And fuck you for not having disagreement. Bye.
I said it in the chat.
Okay, bye. Motherfuckers. All right. Disagreements only, and I'll give you guys like a couple of minutes while I sip my juice. Otherwise, I think we're good. We'll talk more about this in the future. Republicans don't really, the prominent ones. I've had some people pull out of debates recently. They have no way to defend this shit, and I don't think they have any interest in debating it or debating in general. No one can defend this shit without looking like a humongous government bootlicking shill, decrepit little fucking corruption apologist. So they don't really want to have this discussion. They barely wanted to have a discussion on Tim Pool about the National Guard deployment. They're like, what about the Chicago bulldozing the homes? And so they're not really interested in a in the weeds discussion here. They're all fucking pathetic, loser. All the fucking reply guys I have never want to get on VC. It's because they know they can't defend this, and they know they'll look like a fool. And I'll put them on my TikTok, which you should follow, Pisco Liddy, or YouTube, where it'll just be so obvious that they're government bulletin chills. How can Pisco say this and still think Merrick Garland? This is another like thing that I keep seeing. Does this change your mind on Merrick Garland? Like, why would it? Right? Why would Trump being corrupt change my mind on Merrick Garland? Really think that out. Why would it? Who said this? Brandon. All right, we'll call this the Brandon argument. What is the argument that my view on Merrick Garland should be affected by Trump being corrupt? Which I expected. And I had priced this in for years and years and years. Who was the one who was saying that Trump would be corrupt? Right? Like, even just as a, like, looking at me, do you think that I'm like so shocked? What the fuck? Trump is doing this? Why don't you upload the YouTube? I do. They're all in. I've even stopped putting a lot of them on memberships. Although we'll start doing the backlog in membership. But like even recent VODs, I haven't even been that consistent on blocking them for members. The YouTube VODs are available. Just go to the playlist. Thank you for the sub. I appreciate you. So this is for Brandon. Why do you think that this would affect? No. What do you want Democrats to do if they get back into power? To move quick. I wanted Merrick Garland. My whole argument is that Merrick Garland didn't move unreasonably slow. My whole argument is that investigation wasn't the way that people portray it as. That maybe there were a few months delay, but it had to do with what I don't know that it was wholly attributable to Merrick Garland interfering or making some decision. And I think it had to do with like a reasonable, not necessarily that I agree with this, but a reasonable focus on the people who actually committed violent acts that day. And you don't know where that investigatory pathline is going to end up. It could have been that there was more direct evidence of coordination between such individuals and specific members of the Trump administration. So my entire argument is that Merrick Garland is being unfairly castigated for delay. And so I would not accept. I'm not in favor of moving slow. I'm in favor of moving fast. We just have different intuitions about like the degree of fault than I think Merrick Garland had. And he did, but I don't think you can do much about Merrick Garland will not be viewed kindly by history. Yeah, I view that as irrelevant to the actual discussion. So yeah, I don't think that any of this or my opinions, either about Trump or about what Democrats should do in response, bears on like my Merrick Garland take, which has been consistent, which hasn't shifted. I expected Trump to be, and honestly, like I love those discussions as well. Like if people want to debate me on them, we've done the timeline before. I can do it again if you'd like. And part of the reason why my take on Merrick Garland is the way it is because I don't think that the Department of Justice should be influenced by political, like some people are saying that he should be influenced by stopping Trump. That this should be motivating him. That he should have been like, oh shit, we need to move as fast as possible to stop him from running for re-election or from like, that is specifically what I don't want to motivate Merrick Garland. And so I would never sign off on this. Additionally, the timeline that Merrick Garland, really Jack Smith and the previous DOJ, in DC had done, if it weren't for the Supreme Court, the trial would have happened right in the middle of election season. So if it weren't for the unhinged Supreme Court, the trial would have happened during the most politically beneficial time of the Democrats. So even assuming that they were motivated by politics, this arguably would have been like the best time politically for it to occur. And the Democrats couldn't have guessed that we would have had this as unhinged a ruling as we did, which was truly even beyond what I thought they were going to say. I thought they were going to give maybe some version of Amy Coney Barrett's opinion. But to delay the way they did, and they fucked it up more than Merrick Garland did. If Merrick Garland, assuming that he were angling this politically, the trial was scheduled and slated to happen in June, July, August, September, if it weren't for the interference by Supreme Court. So on many reasons to think that the blame on Merrick Garland is misplaced. One thing I do blame Merrick Garland for is not appointing a special counsel to investigate the investigation into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. There should have been a special counsel that was called to investigate the origin of the investigation into Joe Biden and into the Bidens and Hunter Biden and during Trump's first term. This is a big negative on Merrick Garland, and I've called that out. So, yeah. But I basically think Merrick Garland has been thrown under the bus by people who just don't understand the actual timeline here and are, frankly, I think, obfuscating the true guilt here, which is of Trump, obviously, and the Supreme Court, in my mind. I think the Supreme Court gets enormous blame for how the criminal proceeding took place, in addition to Eileen Cannon and the bullshit happening there. So, yeah. I think the DOJ under Biden generally acted incredibly honorably. I do call out both sides because, listen, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I think that Trump is a threat to the country, but I'm never going to do what fucking Rob did and say, I'm not going to call out my own side, even when it's against my principle. Hell no. No. Then what good am I? What good am I? Perhaps one day, if I were to take kind of a different role, if I were counsel for some Democratic office or something, if I were counsel for or took a job in the administration of some Democratic whoever, right? If that were my role and not as a commentator, obviously the level of transparency in my public giving of opinions, that would have to change. But while I'm a commentator, I'm going to be calling out both sides, right? While I am giving you my actual genuine take and that's my value add, I'm not just going to be a shill unless I'm literally a paid shill. And then it's okay, I've taken a role in that official capacity is incompatible with me just spouting off my opinions on everything, right? And I think most people understand that too. But while I'm a commentator, I'm not going to be not talking bad about Democrats. It's crazy. Why is it invalid for charges to not be filed within a week of? So this is why it's a bad thing to argue, right? There was a great deal of evidence and fact finding that you needed to do to charge Trump within that first week after his confirmation. Intent is a huge part of the conspiracy. You need to have a meeting of the minds for conspiracies. He was charged with obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, violation of rights, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. So 3 conspiracies and 1 actual obstruction. And that required evidence of, well, what were the state legislators saying? What were the Mike Pence, right? They had Mike Pence testimony and they had interviewed him. What were all of these communications between, they subpoenaed hundreds of people for documents of their communications. Oh, okay, what did Trump tell you, right? Because Trump doesn't use the internet. He doesn't use a computer. So how are you going to prove intent? If you charge him, it limits what you're able to do from an investigatory perspective. You don't charge a case until it's ready. And the crimes that we're talking about are conspiracies. It's not like Trump himself, even for if you were to charge him with incitement, which, by the way, I think that Trump should have been charged with insurrection and incitement. I think that was a mistake for Jack Smith not to charge that. Wouldn't have made a difference in the end because of the fucking immunity decision, whatever. But even that requires specific intent in the case of incitement and an insurrection, which is premised on an incitement, which it almost certainly would be. That would also require evidence of intent of people saying, this is what Trump felt. This is what Trump told me. He was watching this at this time. And it took months to accumulate that evidence, even just for Congress. So if you charge before you're ready, some of these public look at like the average investigation into this kind of public corruption stuff. They take years, year and a half. Look at the Eric Adams investigation. That took time. Develop the evidence, interview people, start to do that. Like, so these are not you want to be ready before you charge. What about the National Guard argument against the whole incitement insurrection thing? Isn't it documented enough? No, this is not documented at all. An offer, Jesus Christ. No, he never offered National Guard to anybody. One of his members of the Secretary of Defense alleges that he said, should we have 10,000 people here, or should we have some people here of an internal, right? Like internally, like, do we want more people here to defend my protesters? But that wasn't done as a security concern for Congress, and that was never communicated externally beyond, a passing comment from Trump. That's not an offer, okay? An offer is, a potential avenue that one is able to extract something to someone else. But the executive branch never communicated that to DC authorities or to Congress. So there's no offer, right? It just misinterprets what an offer is. And no order, nor would you need to offer, right? The president is in command of the DC National Guard. So no, there was no offer. There's one person alleges an offhand comment from Trump at some point in an internal executive branch meeting. That is not an offer for anything. Another American says, if I was in Merrick Garland, Trump would have been in jail and I would have broken procedure a bit and Kamala Harris would be deciding my punishment. I mean, this is you basically saying, yes, I would politicize the Department of Justice. I'm not willing to do that because I'm standing on principle. And you might say that's cocked or whatever, but like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to give you my honest take, and I don't want to politicize the DOJ. I think that's really important not to do. And so when people are like, why didn't you just fucking throw him in jail right away? Like, no, I don't want to politicize the DOJ. I don't want to do what Trump is doing, which is charging people without evidence or without sufficient evidence or before you're ready. TLDR, how bad are today's developments? It's bad in the following sense. They're really blatant about it. And so it's showing we're becoming more inured to it, and it's boiling faster and faster and faster, and it's not making as much of an impact anymore. And that's dangerous in its own way. But like Josiah, we knew he was doing this in the first term. He was pressuring the DOJ in the first term. He ran on pressuring the DOJ, and he did so the minute he got in office. And so for us, it's not like Trump's willingness to do things and his ability to pressure and his willingness again to pressure hasn't changed at all. And you, of all people, know this more than anyone. Josiah, do you want to talk for a little bit? If you're available, just real quick. I just have a few questions. Did they destroy another boat? What about the Jack Smith and the whole not confirmed by the Senate? It's all bullshit. It's not problematic at all. There have been multiple special counsels that weren't internal DOJ employees. This is all just an Eileen Cannon, stupidity. Please stop listening to Kurt from Uncivil Law. I'm about to hit the sheets. No worries. We'll talk another time. I'm basically wondering, like, if you have plans for the election, 2025 elections, and if so, where are you going to be? But enjoy your sleep. 2025. I'm talking about 2025 elections. Ain't no thing. They're just killing civilian boats on international. Like, yeah, I don't. This is another example of something that Congress should maybe look into. None yet. I think that we should organize ourselves to do something for the 2024 election. Sorry, 2025 election. Either something with respect to the California ballot initiative or something in Virginia or New Jersey. So there's governor's elections in New Jersey, Virginia that matter. There's the ballot initiative in California. But yeah, that's it. All right, folks. Not seeing any disagreement. That's all I have for you right now. Oh, wait, there's someone disagreement. All right, cool. Hey, what up, dude? New spin. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. Can you talk again?
Yeah, I'm good. I wasn't expecting you to pull me in, so it caught me off guard a little bit.
No worries. What can I do for you?
Well, I wanted to going back to the original point of the thing, the tweet of Trump's.
Yeah.
It's bad. I'm not defending it. But I want to try to stillman a little bit of it in a way, because
Okay.
you know that like the lawsuit with just Letitia, because I'm not an expert on any of the other cases that he talked about, the people he mentioned and stuff. I'm not sure what the cases were involved with them. So,
but just to make sure I understand, you're saying that you think that this is bad, but you want to steel mat
I want to try to like.
Wait. Let me. Whoa.
Yes.
Just chill.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I just want to hear you say what you were saying. You were saying you think that what's going on is bad, but you want to steel man the bad thing, correct?
I'm trying, not exactly steel man, but I want to come up with a scenario to where the Letitia aspect, it's a little bit complicated. I'm not trying to steal, like, I'm not trying to justify it. But I also think that, like, so for example,
Can you just tell me what are you trying to do?
okay, so let me just, okay, I'll back up. So everybody knew that the whole, like, this Letitia versus Trump case with the real estate fraud was a big thing in the news, right? And I don't know exactly how the information was found that, like, if they only researched Letitia as a point of revenge to get back at her for the case against Trump, that would be political prosecution. But what I don't know is, because it was like this big thing of public interest, and people who probably supported Trump would have investigated and like sent the evidence to Trump or to the Justice Department, however you want to phrase it. Would that still make it political prosecution, or would that then be Trump or like the Justice Department acting on information that was provided by another source?
Are you asking me a question, or are you stating me that
Yes.
you're okay? So do you have a position, or are you just unsure?
I really am not sure, but I think that you could get to justifying it not as a political prosecution.
When you say you can get to, what do you mean by you can get to? As in, it's possible that one could arrive at that position, or that it's justified that one would?
It's that it's both a little bit.
Okay,
like,
so
do you think it would be a political prosecution if somebody else provided the evidence to the DOJ and then they prosecuted Letitia? Would that as long as the Justice Department isn't the ones who provided the evidence or investigated the evidence, would that still be a political prosecution?
If they're going after someone for violating the law, like mortgage fraud, and not because of any kind of political reason, then I would take that to be a neutral and non-political prosecution or investigation by definition. So
Even if it was like a Trump supporter who provided the information, the evidence?
yeah, if the motivation behind the investigation or prosecution, yeah, that it was provided by a Trump supporter, but if the reason you're going after someone isn't because they are a political enemy or for a political reason, then even though the information was retrieved from a political source, and I'm assuming that a apolitical prosecutor would consider the potential bias in that information, and I'm assuming that most career prosecutors would, take that into consideration. But yes, it would be an apolitical decision by the DOJ.
So then, if you were to take that as true, then couldn't you say that the person who resigned for being asked to pursue the case, that would be a political reason that they were declining, and therefore that's equally as bad?
So let's just take this one step at a time. I just agreed that you could initiate a political prosecution, a prosecution of someone who is a political rival based on information provided by someone who may have a political bias, and it doesn't necessarily make it a political prosecution. The only thing I've agreed to is that hypothetically that is conceivable and possible. That's all I've said.
Right, yeah, right. And I'm not trying to say you said more than that.
Excuse me. So you're asking me a bunch of hypotheticals regarding what could happen. I could run down these hypotheticals all day. Could it be the case that someone refuses to charge politically? Yes, it is possible that if your decision refusing to charge someone is based on political bias or for a political reason, that decision itself would be politically motivated and therefore wrong, and therefore your termination would be justified because you're engaged in a political non-prosecution. Okay, so all of this is just setting out hypotheticals that, yes, it is possible. That is to say, logically possible. It is conceivable. It doesn't entail a contradiction for such things to occur, and I just gave you my response to them. They just aren't in connection with the facts of what has happened. You understand that?
Well, we don't have the exact facts.
No,
of,
hang on.
Provided the evidence to be.
Sorry,
the tweet is bad. I'm not defending that.
You are, because you said that you're partly justifying it, right? You said partly to justify
Well,
it.
I mean, I didn't mean the tweet. I mean, the actions. The tweet is really indefensible because he's very clearly saying, "I want to politically prosecute somebody."
Okay, so you agree that this tweet is Trump saying that he wants to politically prosecute someone.
I will even go so far because I know I would condemn this tweet. I feel like that's a thing you want people to say that they condemn.
Yeah, sure, I do. Yeah, I do.
And I condemn it. I fully do.
And it's do you think it's an impeachable offense, an abuse of power? You said this is a political. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So
if they want, but it's one of those things that I don't think they're gonna. I mean,
I don't think they're gonna either, but I think that they should. Right? You agree that they should. They should impeach and remove him.
Yeah. I mean, they.
Why is this hard? Right? You said that this is a political prosecution, that he is demanding. He's using his power.
He's asking for a political prosecution, 100% in that tweet. There's no question about that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's for sure. And if they wanted to impeach him over, I would think it would be completely legitimate for sure.
So what else is left? Because now you're suggesting, well, couldn't it be the case that the prosecution of Letitia James was justified because there was an apolitical process that was followed? Yeah. Yes, it could be. And I even said that as much months ago when this was a story. I said, listen, if she committed a crime and I'm convinced that the basis isn't political. Now, ultimately, I think that they were investigating her probably because Trump doesn't like her. But I was willing to say if she committed fraud, that's a crime and she should be punished for committing fraud. I said that back in the day. The problem is our reporting is that we had a prosecutor look in and say that the evidence was thin. And that's why he was fired, for his determination that the evidence was thin. And so there's no evidence that the prosecutor they assigned to look into Letitia James was politically withholding a prosecution
this
decision.
is where, because I watched other legal channels and they've gone over the evidence, it didn't seem thin based on their presentation of it.
Yeah,
And so
because
I
they're
question-
shills. These are shills. People like
and that's like a valid argument, but it's like there are people who actually are
who
I
are you
think
listening
like
to?
you that are fair. Oh, so I mean, I know, like Nate the lawyer, I think tries to be fair.
I think that his legal analysis oftentimes is lacking, to say the least. I respect him way more than the other goobers on that show, for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think that you should just say, "Oh, well, the values are different. You said this and that." Like he is not an expert in mortgage fraud cases, I'm assuming.
That's true,
And
for sure.
he doesn't have access to the evidence. All he has are
documents and
you
stuff
need
that
evidence of inducement and intent, and maybe there isn't good contemporaneous evidence that she intended to induce some kind of thing there, right? So like some kind of major benefit there, or maybe there's countervailing evidence that he doesn't have access to. So because he doesn't have the full facts in front of him, his view of it is necessarily limited. I'm not saying that you couldn't draw some conclusions if it was an open and shut case or something, but again, I haven't heard it. I don't have access to it, and I don't think that you can just assume that.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
Well, and I think one thing about just in general, but when it comes to like somebody like me who doesn't have like a law degree or access to law, but I really enjoy it and I wish I would have gone into law. There's a lot of like, it's impossible. It's almost impossible to find a truly apolitical take on things. And so, sometimes you end up having to go to places that are politically biased, and then just trying to like separate their politics from what you actually read or what they're actually explaining. Like Robert Gouvet is like super duper biased, like the most extreme. Him and the guy who used to be law of self-defense. Like I basically, every time I listen to them, I know 100% that they're advocates. They're not like giving a legal opinion. They're just fully given their legal position on it to justify what they want to happen.
Yeah,
I get that.
They almost never criticize, and part of the reason is because I think that their audience captured in a way that
100%.
And they know if they talk shit, if it's the wrong day for one of these conservative influencers to call them out, they can lose a bunch of clout and any potential opportunities. And there's this highly regimented and internally consistent sort of pressure system to comply with the dictates of Trump, and they enforce self-compliance. And so it's not surprising. These guys are fucking shills. People like Good Logic, people like fucking
Good Logic is like super. I agree with Good Logic is bad, but he's also not as big, so it's kind of weird that because a lot of the people who are more biased, they actually grow more because that's what that feeds the algorithm, is being more biased.
They get to these ridiculous positions that are frankly just self-discrediting in many cases here. So listen, I hear you. Regardless of what your thoughts are on the underlying case, and I encourage you to read some of the reporting coming out, because I think it might paint it in a different light, and I think that you should diversify your diet in terms of information regarding these investigations.
Well, I try to.
But I will just say, the tweet by itself. This is impeachable,
no question,
and we don't need to.
No question.
Okay.
It's not good.
All right. Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Good chatting with you.
Later.
Bye.
All right. Any things that are not disagreements will be treated very harshly from now on. Hello, good boy. Disagreement. What up, good boy?
Hey, Pisco.
How you doing?
Good. I'm here to lobby you.
For
again.
what?
So we spoke, maybe it was a week ago, about constitutional reform.
What? I don't remember. Remind me?
Yeah, so I had a proposal to reform the Senate, make it into a tripartite Senate.
That was like a few days ago, right?
Was it?
Yeah,
Oh, my bad.
where it's like you have some people from different institutions or whatever, right?
Yes.
And I asked you to send me
That's
something, right? Oh, did you send me shit on?
I did.
All right, I haven't taken a look at it yet, but I'm happy to consider it. Is there anything else besides that topic that you want to raise?
No, it's been my obsession lately. So
All right,
you know,
I'll take a look at what you sent me.
maybe every once in a while, if you're in the mood.
All right, we'll take a look at some point.
right.
Okay, later, bro.
Much appreciated.
No
Bye.
worries. All right, the Mick. Yo, what up, the Mick? How you doing?
All right, how are you doing tonight?
Doing
all right?
good. Yeah, doing great. What can I do for you?
Okay, I know you're only looking for disagreements.
Yeah.
I wanted to discuss for a moment, Garland. I don't know if you still want to beat that dead horse.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a disagreement, I'm assuming, but yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, in my opinion, special counsel should have been named on day one of Biden's administration.
Why?
Reason being, the magnitude of the events on January 6th itself, it being a riot to breach the Capitol building on the day that they were certifying the results of the election. Assuming, even removing any involvement by the Trump administration in the events of that day, outside of the speech and whatnot, just considering the breach of the Capitol building and the pausing of the certification of the election is something of a severe enough magnitude that I believe it would qualify for a special counsel being named on day one.
Yeah, so I take a special counsel. Thank you for the super chat. I mean, I've addressed that before, and my opinion on that hasn't changed, but I appreciate you, the super chat. So just to be clear, I take a special counsel appointment to relate to potential conflicts of interest, right? Like you appoint a special counsel for a conflict of interest. And I don't think that there was any conflict for the DOJ.
Well, the conflict of interest
at day
would
one.
be the people who are committing the act are overwhelmingly in support of the political opponent of the person that was coming into office, and also that they were overwhelmingly supporting the person that was leaving office. So there would be a potential conflict of interest when it comes to, political disagreements.
Wait, so I don't understand. Like, I don't think, for example, that anytime a Republican is going to be charged that you need a special counsel. I think that in the main...
No, and this is even before we even get to charging like Trump for anything on this matter. I'm just talking on day one, it being a overwhelmingly supportive Trump crowd, a crowd of...
Yes,
Trump
so
supporters.
what? Why does that...
Everyone
Why should we get a special counsel on day one? Why don't we just let... First of all, there's way too many cases for it to be handled in the special counsel's office. That was a major thing of the DOJ. Why wouldn't you want the attorney general overseeing it? Why do we need a special counsel?
to investigate the events of that day, and to remove any...
I'm sorry, why special counsel and not attorney general? Overseeing.
Because of potential conflicts of interest when it comes to...
Well, I don't really see a big conflict of interest for Merrick Garland to initiate an investigation himself. I don't really, or to oversee those who are doing the investigation. Really, the AG at a high level is supervising these investigations. He's not doing the kind of specific on the ground stuff. The U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, he's the one doing many of these cases, and he's operating a massive staff to do that. I don't understand why it need be a special counsel. People have this intuition in their heads that special counsel means more serious investigation, but that's
no,
special counsel.
I don't believe
the special counsel was appointed in response to Trump's decision to run again, and it is to insulate the attorney general, right? Why would the attorney general need to have that insulation? It's to insulate him from accusations that he's going harder on Trump, to try to ruin Trump's chances. That is to keep his own job, right? For Garland, the conflict of interest is Garland's. That if Garland is continuing to stay in power and he's investigating someone who would oust him out of power, that's the conflict of interest. You understand?
Yeah. Do you see the conflict of interest, even assuming that Trump himself wasn't directly involved in the events of that day? Did you not see a conflict of interest there?
No. What's
potential
the
conflict of interest?
What's the conflict of interest? Just mere political disagreement isn't a conflict of interest. It has to do with like your
There would be automatically assumptions and allegations that it was a political attack.
The mere fact that someone is, they're going to call it a political attack no matter what. We cannot just rely on the subjective intuitions of the MAGA people. It has to do with like what a reasonable person might think constitutes an apparent conflict of interest. And I think that one such conflict of interest for Garland, right? For Garland is, hey, me, Garland, I'm overseeing an investigation that has a direct bearing on whether I keep my job. That's the conflict of interest. But before he was running again, that investigation did not have a bearing on whether Merrick Garland kept his job. You understand?
You don't think there would be any sense of potential allegations of impropriety or whatsoever?
Not of impropriety, of a conflict of interest. Of a conflict of interest. The interest, the conflicted interest. What is that interest that's conflicted? Is that Merrick Garland wants to keep his job, people will assume, and Donald Trump wants to fire him. And he's running for an office where he would have the power to fire him. That's the conflict of interest. Whether some people might allege...
The conflict of interest will be present here is if he does not pursue these investigations in the way that Biden finds it appropriate, that he would also lose his job in that case, right?
Well,
so if you would...
So if Biden started pressuring Merrick Garland, then in response to that, that would be a conflict of interest because...
that's why you would name a special counsel.
No, but Biden didn't do that. Biden maintained the integrity of the department and didn't interfere, and so there was no need on the basis of the conflict with Merrick, on the conflict with Joe Biden, because Joe Biden was not exerting pressure.
You may acknowledge that, and you may recognize that he would not do that in this case, but. Not all the people in this country believe that or would acknowledge that fact. That's what would be naming a special counsel. That's what you would do when you name a special counsel is you would remove any sense of impropriety occurring.
I mean, so should there have been a special counsel? Any political investigation or any investigation that involves political figures requires a special counsel?
No, but depends on for instance, the classified documents case. Classified documents case required a special counsel because it was investigating Joe Biden.
Yeah, it was investigating Garland's boss. That's the conflict of interest.
Yeah, even saying that, I mean, it should have been appointed, in my belief, day one of Biden's.
Wait, you're not explaining it, right? So, like,
honestly, because there would still be one that can be like construed to be a conflict of interest there.
What's the when you say there you could construe a conflict of interest? Do you mean like it's logically possible that someone could construe a conflict of interest, or are you suggesting that it's like a credible conflict of interest?
I believe it is what would be alleged and what would be carried on for.
Do you understand my question? Oh, hang on, I'm going back to the question. Think about it for a little bit.
What we have right now. It's what we have right now, right? They still. Just
pause real quick. So someone said the Hillary Clinton special counsel wasn't a boss investigation. Hillary Clinton wasn't investigated by a special counsel for her email stuff. There was the John Durham investigation, and that was a special. He was appointed as a special counsel, Durham, but he was appointed as a special counsel, I believe, after Biden took office, right? Durham special counsel appointment. Or no, he was appointed as special counsel in October 2020 by Bill Barr. On May 3rd, so this is what Bill the appointment says. On May 3rd, and by the way, I don't even necessarily agree with the appointment of John Durham, so I don't think we should look to our cues on John Durham. On May 13th, 2019, I directed U.S. Attorney John Durham to conduct a preliminary review into certain matters related to the 2016 presidential election campaigns. And Mr. Durham's review subsequently developed into criminal investigations to remain ongoing following consultation with Mr. Durham. I have determined that in light of the extraordinary circumstances relating to these matters, the public interest warrants Durham continuing the investigation pursuant to the powers and independence afforded by the special counsel regulation. So I almost think this is like a tenuous basis to appoint this as a special counsel, and I think that Bill Barr is not a good precedent to set. But in general, the Hillary Clinton investigation wasn't a boss investigation, and the John Durham investigation, for what it was worth, was investigating members of the Department of Justice. So, there's potentially a basis to think, it's an internal review. We want it to be a public-facing document or something. Who knows? But I just don't think that that's an adequate basis for all of January 6th investigations to be headed under a special counsel. Just have it be headed by the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia and have the Attorney General at the head of it. And if any conflicts of interest appear, appoint a special counsel.
Yeah, I just think there could be reasonably assumed impropriety there. And you know what?
Okay.
That goes for the same thing on January 7th as well.
And why is this
if Trump was not involved in anything behind January 6th,
so if that's what you mean, I agree. If what you mean is that they should have appointed special counsel on January 7th, yes, I agree with that.
You see what I'm saying here?
No, on that, if that's what you mean, then I agree. I just don't agree that
there
Biden
could have been one on January 7th.
Basically, I'm saying Biden's appointees. What I'm saying is better for Biden. What I'm saying is Biden should have had full latitude to appoint people to investigate this shit, and they should have had more latitude to just do their job. I'm not this kind of person who thinks there ought to have been a special counsel, presumably because we want our appointees to do it, right? The intuition is having the political appointee, the ones who's appointed by Biden in charge, all else equal, right? They're going to be more sympathetic to Biden's political views or potentially influenceable. So I don't know why the special counsel, which is supposed to be insulating, why we would want that, unless it's in the context of, Trump on January 7th, where I think there is a good argument that you should have a special counsel in that context because he was in office and they should have been investigating him. Or they should have known that it's possible that Trump might have some role here, and so they should have appointed a special counsel then. If that's what you mean, I agree. But I think Biden and his appointees should have had latitude to do what they're going to do until Trump announces he's running for president.
I just think it's just the sequence of events as they were, not knowing the facts that we know now, and knowing that Trump was culpable for what occurred, and not knowing about the slates of electors from 7 different states and all of that. There should have been a special counsel on January 7th.
Okay. I mean, on that, I agree. I think that during Trump term 1, there should have been a special counsel.
And carrying it over into that, including the fact that this man was impeached for the actions that occurred on that day. I just think that, it should have happened as soon as possible.
That's not going to change the speed of the investigation necessarily.
And as soon as it was available as an action for the Biden administration, should just pull the trigger on it.
Is it your belief is it your belief that appointing special counsel would have made the investigation go faster? That's your thought process?
In my opinion, appointing a special counsel would just make any attribution of lawfare just be shot dead as ridiculous.
Really? I mean, think about Robert Mueller. You think that people don't consider Robert Mueller to be lawfare? They don't cite Robert Mueller as lawfare? He was a special counsel. You think they called Jack Smith lawfare? The special counsel stuff doesn't work on the accusations of lawfare from the other side because they don't give a shit because they're hacks.
For why Jack Smith is lawfare?
What's that?
They people I've talked to that call what Jack Smith did lawfare. Attribute the fact that they waited for Trump to
that's because they're fucking
again.
Idiots because they believe that Merrick Garland doing something responsible, which is in response to a conflict arising, appointed a special counsel. They're like, oh, this shows that they were going after him because he was running again. because they're fucking idiots and propagandists, shills, and liars. That's why they're. But by buying into this narrative that the special counsel was the real investigation, we're like undermining the DOJ's actions prior to the appointment of the special counsel, when Garland made clear these were ongoing investigations that Jack Smith assumed. Right, Jack Smith took over cases that were already being run. So the appointment of the special counsel isn't the key fact here. It's the kind of investigatory, it's a few months slowdown on the investigatory timeline in deciding to pursue vigorously the false elector scheme. That is where people get mad about. But that started with the main investigation. And it's not a special counsel. I don't know, would have changed. Maybe it's possible you roll the dice again and the different special counsel wants to investigate that pathway, but it's not necessitated.
I'm just saying, pulling the trigger as soon as possible on it would kill, in my opinion.
It would not kill it. It would. So you think that if we have a special counsel appointed after DOJ, after January 6th, that all of a sudden the MAGA people are going to be like, oh, yeah, we can't say lawfare? They don't give a fuck. The accusations are going to come no matter what. It has to do with not just the segment of the population that's calling lawfare. They're going to say whatever they want no matter what. It's about the I don't know what to say. The reasonable people, the majority, independents, people who are fair-minded people, and also the standards of the Department of Justice. I don't think that it has to rely on accusations of lawfare from the other side. That can't be the standard. Because if that were the standard, then we should just never investigate. We have a super chat. I'll let you continue. Sorry, but do you think none of Trump's 5 indictments came close or crossed the line into lawfare? What's your test for making that judgment? So because I think that all of the investigations into Trump, when you say 5 indictments, I think you're referencing the superseding indictment in the Washington D.C. case. So you're double counting the D.C. case. So it was 4 criminal indictments, but there's a superseding one in D.C. So I'm going to count that as 1. So you're talking about the Washington D.C. case, the Georgia election case. You're talking about the New York case, and you're talking about the documents case. No, none of these are lawfare at all. Trump, these are all matters of grave importance. Related to national defense information like nuclear secrets, where he's dead to rights. We absolutely do go after people for classified information. It's not lawfare if he's basically obstructing justice the entire time, putting his thumb in the nose of the fucking DOJ and not giving over documents that we know he has, lying about it, obstructing their investigation into it, getting his lawyers to lie. At what point he was so guilty in that case? That is not at all lawfare. The election cases in Georgia and the DC one get to the heart of our democracy, and so it's a matter of grave importance, where he also, in my opinion, is very clearly guilty, and there's substantive evidence of guilt that is overwhelming, in my opinion. And then finally, you have the New York fraud case, where it's no one even contests that he committed fraud. I mean, I don't even really hear Trump's lawyers, even though they nominally reject that he committed business fraud in the New York case, they have inconsistent theories. They're Cohen defrauded Trump, but that theory only works if Trump is lying about the expenses, which is what he was accused of. So he absolutely did the fraud. Now the question is, is it significant enough such that we would call it lawfare? I say, yeah, he was trying to corrupt the 2016 election by doing campaign violations. I think that he was a party to a campaign violation, and he used his business frauds of his documents in 2017 to cover that up. And so, yeah, he was corrupt in the 2016 election. That gets to the heart of our democracy. It's less important than the other 2 cases, but only because the other 2 cases are, more substantively juicy and are even worse. But that doesn't mean the New York case wasn't bad. So for lawfare, I think it's bad faith motivated litigation or prosecutions, and none of them reach that bar. They're all based on substantial violations of federal or state law that get to the heart of our democracy, or to our most important secrets and obstruction of justice. So it doesn't fit the bill. But thank you for the super chat. Sorry, go ahead, Mick.
I'm just saying that I don't believe anything. If there should have been a special counsel appointed on January 7th, I believe that there should have been one appointed on January 22nd.
I don't think that follows. It doesn't follow, because the purpose for, I think, a special counsel in the case of January 7th has to do with Trump's overseeing the DOJ officially, where he could be a subject of the investigation and where he has an interest to minimize it. And I don't think that conflict is there on January 21st, 2021. And I think that Biden should have the full latitude to appoint people who should investigate one of the major things that happened during that election. So I think that, I think that Biden, you should be more willing to give Biden and his appointees flexibility after the election. And yeah, fuck it. You didn't appoint a special counsel. We're going to appoint our own people to investigate it. That should be something that you want, right? Like that's a benefit to Biden and his appointees. Otherwise you're limiting them, right? If you say the only reason really you're saying special counsel appointed on January 21st is because you don't like the outcome that actually occurred. But if you went back to day one, if you go back to the time where you were on January 21st, you would never have said, oh, we need a special counsel. You should be like, Biden should appoint people and they should throw the book at everybody. But the reason right now, looking back, you're like, oh, we really desperately needed a special counsel is because you didn't like how the main justice did the investigation on January 21st. But you should not retroactively think like that. Like at the time, you would have wanted Biden's appointees to have full latitude. I think it was the right decision.
I think at the time, I still would say a special counsel should be appointed. It's just considering the magnitude of the event. It being
why does the magnitude of it affect your intuition there? We have huge magnitude cases brought by Maine DOJ, brought by U.S. Attorney's Office. Huge, right? Huge cases brought by them.
For the first time in our nation's history, the certification of election was paused.
I don't doubt it. Do you know what the question I just asked?
You asked me to explain the magnitude of the event.
No, I meant why does not to explain the magnitude of the event? I obviously agree on the magnitude. I'm asking why does the magnitude affect your intuition about whether it should be a special counsel or whether it should be main justice or the various U.S. attorneys' offices or divisions of the DOJ? Like they handle big cases. In fact, most of the Jan 6 cases were handled by the U.S. Attorney's Office, not by a special counsel. The special counsel handled the Trump stuff.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's my belief that a special counsel to investigate the facts behind the riot on January 6th, the attempted coup, would have, and honestly, as I said before, especially considering the impeachment that occurred, and it already being a polarized political environment at that time, I believe a special counsel should have been appointed on January 22nd.
To investigate what? What's the scope of their overseeing authority?
Look, investigating the facts behind the riot that occurred on January 6th and the political involvement of the people behind the attack.
Right. So you wanted a special counsel to be in charge of like thousands of employees of the DOJ, all the FBI agents who were investigating like every little person who was, even though we had hugely successful indictments and convictions on seditious conspiracy by the U.S. Attorney's Office, you wanted, for some random reason, a special counsel to oversee it instead of a Biden appointee who was aggressively pursuing all of the people on the ground. And yeah, they didn't pursue the false electors theory as vigorously initially as we would have wanted. And in hindsight, right, maybe there's some months delay there that is not good. But in general, the Biden appointees were doing a great job going after everyone else and going after seditious conspiracy. They had a lot of like novel charges that they were bringing. And so I just don't understand what the intuition, where it comes from. We want a special counsel at the top of this.
Yeah, hindsight being 2020, they did a really good job. They did. They secured over 1,000 convictions. What is it, 1,600, something like that?
I think it was a little less than 1,600, but I think it was less than that. But they definitely,
it was a large amount, right?
That was like that many cases, I think, for sure. Yeah, it was one of the, I think it's the biggest investigation in the history of the DOJ is the Jan 6 stuff.
And I'm not saying that they did a bad job. All I'm saying is to eliminate, any sense of impropriety or alleged claims of impropriety. It would be
okay. We're looping, Mick. We're looping because that's. I've already said I haven't heard you respond to it. That would not have eliminated those feelings, right? It was obviously a justified series of investigations, and it was obviously like something that we needed to be done. This kind of justice. and it was done by a Biden appointee at the head of it, and appointing a special counsel to oversee the 1,000+ investigations in the Jan 6 wasn't going to change minds about it. The people who thought that it was political under the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia were going to think it was political if a special counsel appointed by Merrick Garland would have done so. And it would have unnecessarily restricted the Attorney General's authority and supervision over it. And people would think it would be a cop-out. People would be like, why is Merrick Garland passing this investigation off from the Biden appointee and putting all of the investigations, like insulating the Biden administration's appointees from the biggest investigation in DOJ history? Like, why would we do that? And it wouldn't make sense. I think the reason why people say this kind of stuff is because they're frustrated at the investigation as it actually occurred, and they're frustrated at the Trump versus United States decision. But I don't think it has, like, if you put yourself back in those shoes, you wouldn't want a special counsel. You would want a Biden appointee to be running the investigation, the people that Biden appointed to be in charge of this stuff, because Biden promised to put good people in charge, and generally, I think he did.
I mean, when it comes to how things turned out, it wasn't the fault of anyone who actually engaged in the investigations that things turned out the way they did, right? It does come down to the Supreme Court and their decisions in those cases. I'm not blaming anybody who was involved with those investigations. Like I said before, I believe that if it ought to have happened on January 7th, it ought to have happened on January 22nd. And that's a belief that I hold. I'm sorry.
Okay. Why is your belief that if it should have happened on January 7th, it should have happened on January 21st? Because I've explained what I think are the disanalogy between and why it would make sense on January 7th, but not necessarily make sense on January 21st.
And I've explained my thoughts behind that too, because there's still going to be alleged claims of political impropriety. I mean,
and when I said there are going to be alleged claims of impropriety, no matter what was your response to
that? Yes, there's going to be some people, but it's what's the word? It would be far more disingenuous to claim that that there's impropriety if it happens on day one, and rather than it happening the day that Donald Trump, announces his run for president of the United States.
Thank you, Lydia. I'll take a look at what's going on there. So it's Lydia and Dubia I have to look into. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mick. So if you believe that there should have been a special counsel appointed January 7th, I do, by the way, but I think that special counsel probably should have been fired or replaced when Biden appointee took over. You're basically saying that we should have had a Trump. You would prefer if Trump's acting attorney general, who I forget his name, who was at the time, was it Donahue, or maybe that was a deputy, but whoever or Rosenthal, who was acting AG under Trump at the time. Rosen. So Jeffrey Rosen, at the time, you would have wanted Jeffrey Rosen, a Trump-appointed acting U.S. Attorney General, to appoint a special counsel and for us to keep his ass. Like, why wouldn't you want a Biden-appointed attorney to run the investigations?
Well, I mean, if we dig into this deeper, we're getting into facts that didn't even come into light till later, right? Was Rosenthal one of the people that were
Rosen
threatening to resign?
Yeah, Rosen was.
All right. I mean, see, if I my gut feeling on that is I can't really be too harsh on that guy, because he was one of the people who was threatening to resign. But I only know that now, right?
But he's a conservative, like Trumpy guy. He was appointed by Trump, and he was, I mean, yeah, he did like the right thing, I guess, then. But he is generally a Trump guy. Like he's a conservative. Why would you want him to appoint the special counsel over a fresh Biden appointee running the investigations over all these people? Isn't your intuition that someone who is more Trump aligned would be like more or less harsh on these people?
I mean, not necessarily when when we consider the event that took place. And see, I'm trying not to. I'm not trying to allow him refusing to comply with Trump's orders in the lead up. I'm trying not to let that bias what my mindset would be at that time.
Yeah, at the time, I think you'd be like, all right, yeah, appoint a special counsel to start these investigations to oversee, or maybe perhaps I could even agree with that, perhaps. But in general, there was a new administration coming, and so I'm not like totally offended that the special counsel wasn't appointed under Rosen, because I think that there was an understanding there was going to be a new administration. But I just I let the new administration handle it until there's a conflict of interest. And I think that the conflict of interest arose when Trump announced he was running for election, and when he was definitely a target of the DOJ. And Merrick Garland rightfully recused himself and appointed a special counsel.
Yeah, I think it isn't crazy to for there to be perceived conflicts of interest on day one.
Okay. I mean, which is what? What is the conflict of interest?
Political conflict of interest.
Between so you think that there was a conflict of interest between the Biden?
It could be perceived. I'm not saying that there was.
That standard means that we should never appoint anyone and we shouldn't investigate at all, because it could be perceived. It could be reasonably perceived. No, I don't think it could reasonably be perceived. I think it could be perceived by unreasonable people, but it could not be reasonably perceived. But anyway, hey, thank you for your comments, and yeah, I'll think about it. Brother, you're still on the line. I'm going to disconnect you, though. Much love. Hey, Mick, much love. Disconnecting you now. I don't know. That was a weird ending, but last caller. Erkleen, what's up? What can I do you for? Hello. Go once. Going twice. And yo, what up?
My bad.
What's
Don't
up?
kick me, please. Okay. I have a disagreement.
About what?
So I think this Tom Homan thing is a nothing burger.
Why?
Okay. So MSNBC is just not giving the goods, all right? All we're getting is sort of vague characterizations of the interaction that went down. And there's plenty of sort of plausible reasons to think that what he did was in no way illegal. And I'd be happy to go in.
Yeah, talk about it.
Okay, so first off, in 2018, as the article mentions, he says that he's retiring from public office. Second, he at the time is head of a company that's, gonna help people get government contracts, basically, telling people how to write the
grants and shit.
Proposals. Sorry?
Like grants and shit. Okay.
Yeah. For specifically for Homeland Immigration Enforcement and so on.
Got it.
And there's just like no real good evidence that like he's really did anything wrong,
What do you mean?
Okay, well, they said the MSNBC said they had access to the documents, but they don't give a quote of him sort of, here's the quote, here's how they describe it, and I'll quote the article. He indicated he would facilitate securing contracts to help them in exchange for money once he was in office, according to documents and the people familiar with the case. It says in the article that MSNBC reviewed these documents. They don't provide a quote of this.
Quote of what? A quote of what?
Of him basically saying what he's indicating that he would do here.
So do you think that the lack of quote affects your intuition about whether he did something wrong? The fact that MSNBC didn't quote directly?
Yeah, it affects my,
Why?
Intuition. Well, because if there was a quote, that would give me a much more solid basis, because now it's kind of hearsay, right? I'm relying on their communications about
Wait, it's not hearsay.
Documents and so on.
It's not hearsay. So they're.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean a colloquial sense. I don't mean like.
Well, what do you mean in a colloquial sense? These are. In what sense are they secondhand? They purport to be recordings. I guess they're. To the extent they're not recordings, I guess it's maybe an FBI person wrote down what he said, but they could certainly testify to what Homan said, and they're his own statements. So it's an opposing party statement. This is a categorical exception to the hearsay rule. All right. So what do you mean? That's his words.
Yeah. I'm saying that they are saying according. So basically, they're not quoting the documents that they're referencing here. They're not quoting any of that.
So there's internal DOJ documents that purport to show that he was accepting $50,000. There's a video that they claim existed of $50,000 in bills being given to him in exchange for this. So a couple questions for you. First, do you want to deal with a scenario where you accept the facts as given by MSNBC, and then the situation in which you're calling into question the facts as given? Like, maybe that would be a good way to organize this conversation. Do you understand? So if it's the case that he took $50,000 and with a promise to affect the giving of government contracts, that he personally accepted that money in exchange for some future action under the administration to affect how government contracts are awarded, do you think that that is problematic, A, or B, illegal, or both, or none?
It is both problematic and conspiracy to commit bribery.
Okay, great. So to be clear, if this is true, if you believe he did this, then you think that it's a big deal and a problem, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
I believe there's. Okay.
So do you deny that there's likely a video that shows him accepting $50,000 in bills?
No, I don't deny that there's such a video.
Okay. So
what I'd more so argue with is the characterization of the sort of services rendered by him, or services he'll say he'll render. That's where I would appreciate the quote, right? Or sort of direct characterizations on the conversation by the FBI. Although I assume they had a recording device on them, right? I mean, like it wasn't some mafia shit happening in like a bathhouse. But sort of reasons to believe that, reasons to believe that this isn't what happened because, basically it seemed like he had retired from public service in 2018. He announced that. And he said
he's coming back, right? Trump comes back in January. I'll be on his heels coming back in July 2024.
Where?
So the article, MSNBC quotes Homan at the National Conservative Conference in July 2024. Trump comes back in January. I'll be on his heels coming back, and I will run the biggest deportation operation this country's ever seen. July 2024.
July 2024. And this
the recording happened September 20th, 2024. Before. Sorry, after. The conversation happened after the quote.
Okay.
Do you acknowledge that quote indicates that he expects to be part of the administration? Yes or no?
I'm trying to find the quote. Wait, can you give me some
quote? Trump comes back in January.
Oh, heels. Yeah. Okay. When Trump comes back in January, I'll be on his heels, and I will run the biggest deportation operation.
Do you acknowledge, yes or no, that quote suggests that he is going to be a part of the administration if Trump is elected?
It definitely indicates that, and it seems to believe that, that he thinks that he will be.
Okay. So given that, right, he expects to be part of the administration if Trump wins on September 20th. After this, this is the quote from MSNBC. Undercover FBI agents posing as contractors communicated and met several times last summer with a business colleague who introduced them to Homan and with Homan himself, who indicated he would facilitate securing contracts for them in exchange for money once he was in office, according to documents and the people familiar with the case. And then they reference the recording. You think, and I think it says that they spoke with 6 people on this matter internally. What do you think is more likely? That let me just see, according to 6 sources familiar with this matter, what do you think is more likely? That the MSNBC is just fucking lying about this, and that the 6 insiders are lying about the fact that this is what the $50,000 was for? And then my other question is, like, if the $50,000 wasn't for that, what do you think it was for? They had a sting operation. These were FBI agents. What do you think that money was for?
It would be for helping these purported business people secure a contract with Homeland Security.
Wait a second. So
when he was not in office, or when he would not be in office.
So he was taking $50,000 in cash money to do these services?
Yeah.
And you think that's plausible, as opposed to, hey, give me this money, I know the administration, and I'll use my role and influence to get you these contracts? What do you think is more likely? That if this were a legitimate transaction to do like legitimate lobbying, he would have to report that. Why would he take the bills?
Who do you think stipulated cash? Do you think it was the FBI? Or do you think it was Homan?
You don't know. Why would you accept it? Why would you accept cash?
Why not?
Because that implies it's an illegitimate transaction. Don't you agree? Yes or no?
I mean, sure.
Here's $50,000 in a bag. Take the bag. I'll help you get the contracts later on when I'm in office.
Now you're putting in quotes that aren't there. But
no. What do you think is most likely? And he says, no. The quote. This is the quote. Wait, this is the quote from MSNBC, who indicated he would facilitate securing contracts for them in exchange for money once he was in office. That is Homan. You're saying I don't believe it because they don't have a quote. But what do you think is more likely?
And they say he had access to these documents. So why the fuck don't they print the goddamn quote?
Sorry. They could have reasons for not printing the quote, having to do. I don't know if you listened to Taylor Lorenz explain that kind of shit. Maybe they haven't. The government officials didn't want to release those specific DOJ documents. I'm not sure that the FBI agents or the officials who spoke with MSNBC provided those documents, or so I'm not sure about that. But we at least have reporting that these officials who set up this whole exchange, that Homan said that he would facilitate the contracts when he was in office. So you say that you don't believe them because they don't have a specific quote. Is that right?
Yep.
And so why did he take the $50,000?
To help them with their contracts.
With what contracts? Wait, so to help with contracts? You just don't think that? So you believe that's so convenient. It's so convenient, right? You believe everything except the part that of like I'll do it when it's in office. Why do you choose to believe not that part, but you believe every other part?
Well, one reason why.
Excuse me. Can you?
Because it says later in the article. It says later in the article that he has no input in specific contracts in his.
No, that doesn't matter. No, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. At the time he made this, he was representing it. I'm sorry. I asked you a specific question. Why do you believe all the other parts of the story except for the part about in office? Can you explain that?
Why do I believe all the other project story except for?
So you don't doubt that $50,000 in bills was exchanged, correct? You don't doubt that?
Yeah, I don't think they made up a video. I just say I think it's very weak language around.
Sorry.
Indicated that he would.
What did I just ask you? Do you remember what I asked you?
Yeah, you said why do you believe every other element of the story except for that he said he would do it, in office?
Yeah, can you explain that? That's what I want to know.
Well, okay, so I think there's very good reason to believe that they're not going to make up this whole video thing, right? That seems like a weird thing to lie about. And then now we're getting into the subjective, right? When we talk about how, people are going to characterize this interaction between these two people. and I see this weak language. I see, indicated he would facilitate securing contracts for them in exchange for money once he was in office. Indicated. All
What
right.
What do you mean?
So
And so that's a reason to doubt it?
Indicated is
Dude,
a weak
okay, all
word,
right. So I don't know what you mean by weak word. What do you mean by weak word?
What would be a stronger word there?
I don't know what you mean by weak. I'm asking you a question. You didn't give me a question. You asked me an answer. You asked me a question. What would be a stronger word? I asked you, what do you mean by weak?
Okay.
I'm asking you what you mean. Do you mean perhaps that it's ambiguous, that multiple different things could indicate that it's not, maybe it was like an ambiguous signal that he sent, and maybe he did a wink wink, and that could be indicate? Is that what you're suggesting?
That could be it speaks to a low level of confidence in the statement.
Okay, the sting operation that was set up by the FBI. Why do you think that they would set it up such that it would be legal conduct and whatever? So like, you believe that there was a sting operation, correct?
I do believe there's a sting operation.
So they were doing a sting operation for a legal thing, something that was legal. A normal business transaction, or do you think that they were setting it up to be a sting where there was something illegal?
Yeah, that would definitely be their intent, but it seems like that they weren't done. They weren't done incriminating him, essentially. They wanted to wait until he was in office. And
That's
see
something
how,
different. That's about waiting whether they would reach back up to have an airtight case of bribery as opposed to just the conspiracy case, and to make it even stronger. But that doesn't mean that.
Yeah. But my point here is it's not necessarily the case that, they're trying to get him criminally right then and there. It could just be that, they think they incidentally got him to say something criminal. But that what they were really trying to do was wait until he was in office and, get the real sort of, money shot there, right?
I think that you're definitely reading too much into this language indicated. I think that you are, like, even if it were the case that there's like some kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, not an explicit, I am doing this to use my official power. I think you would understand that some briberies are done with certain understandings that don't include explicit quotes. Perhaps it's like a kind of like knowingness about what's going on and what the offer is and when you should expect to see that done. Maybe he references his position that he's expecting to do in the nature of that conversation. But you're basically accusing MSNBC of straight up lying, right?
Well, no, because indicated, it doesn't mean, it doesn't say he did. He said he would facilitate contracts for them in exchange for money, or he made it clear that he would facilitate contracts for them.
Yeah,
in
maybe he
exchange for money,
nodded.
or
Maybe he told someone else to say yes. Maybe.
Well, why don't you say he nodded? Why don't you say he told someone else
Who the
to say
fuck?
yes? Why the fuck?
This is fucking
what is
nitpicking.
indicated?
So the acceptance of the $50,000 and presumably what the FBI's the sting people's ask which was, according to MSNBC, to win government contracts in a second Trump term. That the acceptance of $50,000 in cash, I'm going to ask you just straight up, what do you think is more likely? That Hammond thought that this was a legitimate transaction, or that he thought it was an illegitimate transaction, in the sense that, do you think that he was taking this cash money because he thought he was going to render legal services, or was he taking this cash money, $50,000 in bills, to do something using his official powers? What do you think is most likely?
Did he not report this transaction? Is what you're saying?
Sorry, I asked you a question. Now you're asking me a question.
Purposes? Because you're saying, oh, there's this cash, and so it's clearly illicit. But if the cash transaction is reported and on the balance sheet of the company, then, like, I don't see what this whole cash.
There's no evidence that this is. Yeah, this
you want to make about it is about.
But be honest, these kinds of transactions don't happen with cash. Agreed?
Generally, they don't. But
no, they don't. They happen over contracts.
Are you going to be
why would you accept? No, you would say, I'm not going to take $50,000 in bills. Wouldn't you expect that if this was a legitimate transaction?
Counter question. Can I just
wait? Can you answer it first?
Record it on the balance sheet? Did you think, because there's a crime there if he didn't?
Yeah, no, I don't think that he recorded this $50,000, but I don't know. It's not alleged there, but I doubt it.
Oh, okay. All right.
I doubt it. But even if he did, by the way, even if he accepted that money, and with the promise to enrich his company in exchange for some government contract, and he labels it or something as like business services or whatever, just doing this kind of accounting trick, even if that is the case. But maybe he did report it. I don't fucking know. Or maybe he laundered it some other way. I don't know what the money was on. Perhaps. But what's that?
You're way over your skis now.
Wait, hang on. Sorry. You think that it's legitimate that he took this, that he thought, yeah, I'll take this $50,000 in cash to help award these contracts. And you think that Homan is thinking, yeah, this is all on the up and up?
Yeah.
That is fucking stupid. These kinds of transactions don't happen with cash. You know that.
I mean, I don't do government contract. How the fuck do I know that? Like, maybe there's a big thing about cash in Texas. I don't know. All right. Maybe they like cash there.
I'm asking you, and you didn't answer the question. What do you think is more likely? That this is part of a legitimate transaction for lobbying services, or that this is part of a scheme to get, using his official connections and through unofficial channels, and not through the requirements for lobbying and government contracts, to get contracts that way? What do you think is more likely?
Well, I think by, the
answer the question first. Just answer the question first, and then you can explain it. Just answer it first.
Okay. I think it's more likely that this is a legitimate thing, based on the statements of the administration, the omission of the quotes, and
the statement of the administration. This administration, which is like already accepting bribes in other contexts, right? You acknowledge that the administration that is using the DOJ politically to give cover for the Qatar airplane, to basically allow for the most massive amounts of crypto money funneling that ever existed. We had the Qatar story, the United Arab Emirates story come out recently, where they're using, Steve Witkoff and the Trump family are making these like mining deals to secure minerals for, and using basically government power to sign off on these major deals that are going to enrich Steve Witkoff. So you're just saying the Trump's administration's conclusory statement, the conclusory statement by which basically said there's no credible evidence of wrongdoing, you believe that, and that's like what you're going to go off of over, and because MSNBC doesn't have a direct quote of how he indicated, you're going to take that over like the suspiciousness, the overwhelming suspiciousness of receiving $50,000 in cash to receive government contracts.
If the FBI agents stipulated that they're going to give you cash, right? I don't think it's that all too weird to be accommodating to the client and just say,
no, to accept the cash, that is weird. You know why that's weird?
It's a client.
It is odd and strange to accept $50,000 in cash for lobbying services if it's a legitimate transaction. Do you know why?
First of all, we don't know it's lobbying services.
Or whatever. What would be the legitimate? Sorry, what would be the legitimate service that Homan would be providing?
Help with grants, lobbying, grant writing.
Yeah. So if that were the case, and here you're giving massive benefit of the doubt, Homan would say, no, I'm not taking cash. You have to send that to my bank. You send this amount of cash when you're trying to avoid government oversight and regulation. That's why you send this amount of cash. You know this, right? The bank flags it whenever you take out more than $10,000 of your bank account. You realize that, right?
Sounds like a terrible way to avoid government, whatever.
Why? Paying in cash is literally why people do that.
If you're gonna write down these people's names, if you're gonna put it in a balance sheet, if they want to,
you don't know that happened. Wait, you don't know that happened. Wait, hang on a second. So, do you agree? Do you agree that accepting $50,000 in cash is suspicious for such a transaction, or no?
I don't believe it's suspicious to accommodate the client by accepting cash. I think it's more likely that a transaction is illegitimate if it is in cash than if it is by more traditional means. But at the same time, if these FBI agents stipulate it's going to be in cash, then I don't see why he wouldn't just say, all right, fine.
Okay, if you don't agree that paying for services of this value with bills, with cash, meaning bills of dollars, is suspicious, we don't live in the same America, dude. You understand that? We don't live in the same society.
suspicious.
So before you said it wasn't
suspicious.
before you said it wasn't suspicious. Now you're saying it is suspicious. Do you recognize you changed your answer there?
No, I don't recognize myself as changing an answer.
Wait. So do
think
you want me to pull up?
wait.
Do you want me to pull up the stream and when you said it wasn't suspicious?
This is ridiculous.
Wait.
This is,
Wait. I just want to acknowledge because I often have this happen where I'm tracking the conversation, and you're now denying that you said it wasn't suspicious. So I want to really make sure. Are you really saying that you think that you didn't say it wasn't suspicious?
All right, it's like you always want to flatten everything down to this binary, okay? Let me just say in full text what I want to say, all right, about this. I think it is suspicious in the sense that it is more likely that a transaction is somehow improper if it is done, besides if it is done in cash, than if it is done through traditional means. However, I don't think it's suspicious if the FBI agents are the ones who stipulated the cash.
Why? To accept
Because it
the
makes
cash.
sense to be accommodating to a client. That's
To accept.
basically it.
So do you think that if you were a member of you're selling a house,
It
right?
could be grossly
Selling
overpaying for all you know. And so he's like, yeah, I'll take the cash.
Wait, no.
Great.
So you're saying it's not suspicious to accept $50,000 in cash. It's only suspicious to offer $50,000 in cash. Is that right? In bills, I mean. Here by cash, I mean bills.
Not accept, but to stipulate that it be in cash. So if you're like, I want cash, and then you accept the cash, that's suspicious on you. And it could be suspicious on the other party too, if you know. Of course, I'm starting from the basis that
it is extremely suspicious to be offered $50,000 in cash and then to accept it. That is suspicious.
I'm offering you $50,000 in cash right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like,
You accept
wait, so I'm gonna be like, that's stolen money. I'm not gonna accept $50,000 in cash. No, because that money is probably dirty money. You're probably laundering.
I've been introduced to you by a business associate, and I have.
No, I'm not gonna take the liability of accepting $50,000 in cash because I need to know that I'm not gonna be fucking on the hook for some government investigation that this isn't laundered money. This isn't dirty money. This is extremely suspicious.
He doesn't have all your know-how. He's not a fancy schmancy lawyer. Okay, so
no, stop. This is so at this point, right? Like, this is common knowledge. You know this. What you're doing right now, this is not honest.
It's pretty honest.
So if someone comes into a store, right, like, and is trying to handle that amount of money, $50,000 in bills, you don't think that that's a red flag? And someone accepts it.
They walk into a store.
Yeah. Hey, take this. I have $50,000 in this
they're buying
bag.
a candy bar. 50,000 candy bars. Come on. At least make it believable. Like, come on.
I don't know what to do with you, bro. Like, we don't live in the same America.
What is? I think we do.
Businesses don't handle that large quantity of money, cash. That is to say, bills.
Not regularly, but just saying again, if the client stipulates, blah, 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 blah. You know my argument.
No, he's going to say, yeah, that's drug money. That's money that's dirty money. No.
Why would he think it's drug money? He was introduced to these people by another business associate.
I'm not. What I'm telling you, the kinds of things that people would think of, like, no, we're going to pay with cash.
What, you don't think you could socially engineer some guy into taking $50,000 in cash? Like, come on.
This is insanity. Like, what we're seeing right now is
it could be
you're taking the. So I want to summarize the conversation so far. You think that there's nothing suspicious about a person, Tom Homan, an individual, accepting $50,000 in cash. That's number one, because it was offered to him by the client. So that's what you're saying. So you did say that. Number two, you're taking on good faith the conclusory statement by the administration, Kash Patel, and the AG Blanche, or Deputy AG Blanche, that there's no credible evidence of a crime. That's your second piece of evidence. And third is the MSNBC didn't provide a direct quote of what they meant by indicated. That's your evidence that this is legitimate.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'd like to add, he was a consulting man in his current position in the administration. He's not dealing with direct contracts, and yeah.
Wait, why does that matter? The crime was committed as soon as he made that quid pro quo. Agreed? Yes or no?
Sure, but it would make more sense that to do the quid pro quo, right? If he were, in such a position.
I don't know what you mean. But I don't know what you mean by. So first of all, I don't believe that Holman wouldn't have influence in terms of contracts. They say that officially, whatever. But I'm going to tell you something. This administration lies. You get that? Do you agree?
Does MSNBC not lie? Or do they not mischaracterize?
I'm just waiting for you to answer my question.
Does the administration lie? I mean, it's a meaningless statement. All administrations lie.
This administration lies about a lot of shit.
All administrations lie about a lot of shit.
Okay. So you think this administration, in terms of truthfulness, is on the same level as past administrations?
Definitely.
Okay. Why are you such a Trump dick suck?
There's no need to engage in personalities.
Dude,
right?
Dude, can we just get to the bottom of this? You just believe Trump, that this is all on the level. And you're
I don't think Trump was put in the article at all. But
so,
okay.
Do you think that Hunter Biden did anything corrupt?
Hunter Biden?
Yeah, with Burisma.
Did he do anything corrupt? I haven't looked into it.
Okay, so you don't have an opinion on that, right?
I mean, I understand that he was sort of, I guess, accused of influence peddling and whatnot. I don't know. Right?
I can't tell this is a troll, bro. I can't. All right, let me try something else. Okay. So, do you think that if MSNBC comes up with a quote saying from the Sting people that they said to Homan, "Hey, we need help in the second administration," and then Homan says, "Yeah, I can help you once I'm in office," something to that effect, would you be like, "Okay, this is corrupt"?
Yeah, that's conspiracy to commit bribery.
Okay, and you're not there yet because of the term indicated, but all it would take is some kind of additional amount of detail of what indicated meant.
Yep. Basically. Yeah.
The $50,000 in cash, you think that looks bad?
I think it looks bad, don't get me wrong, but I think there's explanations as to why it could be that aren't bad.
What's the best explanation for why the $50,000 in cash isn't strong evidence of the illegitimacy of this transaction?
Well, I think I've already listed.
Just lay it out one more time. Just paint me the story. Paint me a narrative, right? I'm asking for a narrative on why this isn't strong evidence of the illegitimacy of this transaction.
Okay. I'm not that great at narratives, but I'll just give you the bullet points. A, they could have grossly overpaid. B, they could have, in some way sort of social engineered that to make it think that it's sort of plausible that, they're sort of in cash business or whatever, or that they would have this large amount of cash on hand, or that they like to deal in cash. C, he wants to appease the client, and it could be just a combination of any of those three.
Okay.
I
disagree. I think it's fucked up.
Well, then why don't we see, an IRS look into it, and they did,
because they closed the investigation. So what do you think about that? They closed the investigation. That's the part of the reason why this is a story, is because they stopped the investigation. What do you think of that? That's corrupt, right?
No, because
Why
if
not?
they're just sort of, well, you shouldn't just be fishing for random. If they characterize it as, if their characterization is correct, right, and there's no reason to think it isn't, then basically this guy's done nothing wrong and he's being investigated.
Do you think this is a baseless investigation? So Kash Patel and Todd Blanche call this, quote, a baseless investigation. Is this a legitimate investigation? To the fact that he accepted this money, you think it's a baseless investigation, or do you think that it's not a baseless investigation?
I think a very strong indicator that it's a baseless investigation is the lack of a quote.
No, that is a quote about the indication, but like, should this have been investigated? Yes or no?
I believe in the article it says that there are reports that he was doing this sort of influence peddling.
What did I just ask you?
Yeah. So there sounds like there was a basis to start the investigation.
Okay, so then you disagree with the administration when they say it was a baseless. Do you disagree with the administration when they say that it was a baseless investigation? They characterize it as a baseless investigation. Do you disagree with the administration?
Well, it would depend on how credible those reports were, right?
No. You just said that there was a basis to investigate, and the administration said it was a baseless investigation. So I'm asking you, that's a straight up contradiction. So are you willing to agree that the administration is incorrect when it says that it was a baseless investigation?
I think by baseless, they don't mean literally no base. I think they mean a shitty base or a pretext.
Well, what do you mean when you say it has a base?
I mean that, there seems to have been reports that he was doing influence peddling. I don't know if they're good reports or they're bad reports.
So you think the baseless, they mean bad? Like, I just don't understand. Like, you're distorting the English language.
It's absurd.
Okay, so I take a baseless investigation to be one that has no legitimate basis. You seem to think that there is a legitimate basis.
Legitimate basis now.
So so when you say that it was I'm sorry. So then I'm not understanding what you mean. You said that it wasn't a baseless investigation, that there was a good reason to investigate, right? Or are you saying that it's not a good reason to investigate?
I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying it sounds like there was a plausible reason to investigate. I don't know if it was in fact a good reason to investigate. But yeah.
So
I'm not in a position.
If people are alleging that Homan's he's promising all these things about that he's going to secure these, they're going to secure. Hey, hang on a second. So I'm pulling up something else from CNN. Just heads up. So there's additional characterization from CNN, which is taking it from the New York Times. But if people are saying, hey, Holman is promising that he's, in exchange for personal money or money to his business, he's going to secure all these contracts, you don't think that that's a legitimate basis to investigate? Legitimate good reason to investigate? Or you think we shouldn't even investigate that?
It would depend on the person, right?
I'm asking you, if we have reports, hey, to this guy, Tom Homan, he's big in these border contracts and he's making all these promises that he, like, when he gets in office, he's going to secure these contracts in exchange for money to his business. Should the FBI investigate that? Yes or no? All else equal?
If someone anonymously calls in and says, this guy, Tom Homan.
Not just an anonymous tip, but like someone goes and meets with the FBI and it's not anonymous, but they just say they report it.
Well, if I'm the FBI, I would have some follow-up questions for that person.
Okay, yes, you might have that's not what I asked. Is it a good reason to start an investigation? Hey, people are coming to us. They're telling us that Homan is making these promises.
I don't know because I don't know about the quality of this person as an informant. I don't know. So yes, if you have a good quality informant and so on, then there is a basis, but it seems to be that they don't think there's, such an informant. Bove and whoever the hell else gave a statement. I don't think it was Bove that gave the statement.
So this is
stop the investigation. But
this is CNN. It says Holman was investigated for potential bribery and other crimes after he agreed to help the undercover agents posing as businessmen secure government contracts in a second Trump administration. The report says. So there is a report somewhere that's been circulating around these news organizations. Apparently, on the tape of the September 2024 meeting, the New York Times reported Holman appeared to agree to help the undercover agents win the contracts if Donald Trump won re-election. So it seems like it's on the tape that and the agreement, by the way, could be him just accepting $50,000 in fucking cash, dude.
Wait, I'm in the CNN article. Can you give me a unique word?
I don't know. So, want me to give you a sentence fragment?
Sure.
Okay. On the tape of the September 2024 meeting.
Okay. On the tape is okay. Appeared to agree. Oh my God! Come on.
Well, he accepted $50,000. That's pretty good evidence that he agreed, right?
Appeared to agree to help.
Wait, he accepted
Yeah,
$50,000.
he agreed to. Really, an agreement happened of some sorts, but what was the
right? So, what do you think that the FBI? What do you think the sting operation was doing? Were they trying to not implicate someone in most stings that you talk about? So, you ever watch like fucking Chris Hansen? You ever watch Chris Hansen?
from time to time? Yeah.
Do you think like he's like, hey, do you want to meet with me? I'm 18. I'm legal. Or do you think he's like, I'm 15? What do you think that they do? If you're trying to do a sting operation, are you indicating that you want to do something legal or illegal?
In the by the culmination of the sting operation, you do want to show them as doing something illegal, but it's not necessarily the case that in every interaction, such as, these sort of first interactions and the final interaction that they had, that they got him to do something illegal.
Why would you set up a sting that's like, here's $50,000 in cash, and we're setting it up so it looks legal? Doesn't the very nature that this is a sting indicate to you that the setup was illegitimate? It's FBI people. It's not real people.
Okay. No, because okay, so what do you mean by indicate?
I mean, tend to show. Tend
to show. Yeah, so I guess I would. That it is a sting makes me think that it is, somehow trying to sort of like get out some wrongdoing from this guy Homan.
Right, it's a sting operation. These aren't real business transactions at all. They're the FBI agents posing as business people, and they're not going to set it up so like, hey guys, we just set up Tom Homan, and we set him up for a legitimate deal.
But I think that they intended to go to him later and sort of try to make good on these sort of ambiguous promises, right?
You don't know shit about the conversation. Who's now adding a bunch of stuff?
Well, I'm just saying we don't know that there was anything sort of illegal that happened.
The fact that you think that the FBI is setting up for a follow-up with what? A follow-up to do what?
To sort of get him to influence how contracts are doled out.
Right. That he's going to be a member of the administration. And do you think that Homan, like, think about it. What, like,
he could just be establishing a business relationship with him, is what I'm saying.
$50,000 in cash to establish a business relationship?
Yeah, to render services and consulting and
what services did Homan provide? What services?
In grant writing, consulting.
So I'm assuming that Homan did a bunch of grants. I'm assuming that there's a written contract somewhere, right?
I don't know.
Why would you just take $50,000 in cash? Where's the contract? Did he follow up in emails like, hey?
Where is the contract?
Yeah, because it's not a real fucking. Because Homan didn't think this was like a lobbying deal.
Release the files,
dude.
Okay, like release the files.
Wait. Just chill with me. Just follow me on this, okay? So Homan is. If this was legitimate and you just gave 50, that's serious money. You'd expect Homan's like coming back and saying, hey, by the way, this is our strategy meeting. This is a slide deck. This is what we're going to do for our presentation. You think he did any of that?
Yeah, you probably tap dance and, so on. Yeah, what?
So don't you think that would be something that would have come out in the reporting, come out by Homan saying, hey, This is bullshit. I thought this was like a real deal. I accepted this $50,000 in cash. Yeah, but here's the contract. Here are the services that I rendered for $50,000. And you're like, well, no, because he didn't render services. Come on, dude.
Well, okay. First of all, they just, this news came out today, right? It broke today. Second, the administration is saying it's, baseless and so on. If this becomes a real media issue, yeah, I could definitely see them trying to put out a different account of the facts.
You don't think they would have immediately said, no, this was a legitimate business transaction. We thought this is showing the government doing bad shit, because Homan thought this was a legitimate thing. And look at all these slide decks that he made. He thought that this was on the level. They were planning for presentations with the administration to genuinely convince them about this thing. And they were just providing this. No, that didn't happen. Come on. Because Homan was prepping for an administration position. And he knew that. That's why in July, he was saying he was going to run the deportation thing. So he wasn't going to run consulting services if Trump won. Agreed? Yes or no?
Okay. This is
Was Homan, Homan was planning on taking a government position, correct? If Trump won.
So by that MSNBC quote where they're saying, I will, coming in on the heels.
No, that's a quote from Homan.
Yeah. Homan quote. Deportation.
I'm going to repeat the question. Do you think Homan was? Do you think Homan was planning for a government position if Trump won?
Here's how I square it.
No, can you just answer that first, and then you can square it. But so Homan was prepping. You already granted this, just so you know, that he was prepping for a government position. He was going to run part of Trump's immigration stuff. He was prepping for that. Yeah. Agreed?
Yeah, but there's a lot of time in the
November, you said, but there's a lot of time. Okay. I just want to emphatic. Yes, you agree, correct?
That he intended to be
a member of the administration. So he wasn't planning on doing these kind of. Do you think he was going to be a member of the administration and also run these kinds of consulting services at the same time?
Here's the rub. All right, 3 months in between January and November.
You fucked up.
No, November to January, where you know he's going to win re-election and so on, because it says win contracts if Trump won the re-election, not by his inauguration or after he's been appointed by Trump.
Who's he going to lobby? Biden?
No, not lobby, but advise, help with grants and so on. All these.
You're cooked.
Get them connections.
You're cooked. You don't believe this? Come on. You don't believe this? He wasn't planning. So after Trump won, you think that this $50,000 in cash money, it's more likely, as opposed to
big contracts.
What's that?
They're big contracts. Like, yeah.
What money. Okay, this $50,000 in cash, in bills, that he accepted this monies with the understanding that he would provide consulting services for the interim between when Trump was elected and when he assumed office.
In the interim between when he was elected and when he was appointed, yeah.
Why do you think that?
Because that would be a legal, business maneuver by the guy.
I'm sorry, but do you have any basis to believe that? Do you have any reason that you would believe that? Or is it just something that would fit and make it legitimate?
Yeah, it's something that would fit, that would make it look legitimate. What's your...
No, yeah, I'm asking, okay, I'm asking, do you think that actually happened?
Yeah, that's what I think is most likely to happen by the fact that they're not publishing the stuff. Like, come on.
You're cooked, dude. You're cooked.
I'm not cooked. I think you're giving into the latest MSNBC hysteria here.
It's not hysteria. So when you take $50,000 in cash money from agents who are planning a sting, all right, these agents are planning a sting. They're not planning a normal business transaction. So they're not going to be providing Homan with a bunch of materials and this is our legal strategy for doing things, right? You agree with that because they're planning a sting? So they're not
No,
going
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that
so
at all. I
you don't.
think
You
they-
wait.
they
You don't. You don't agree
absolutely-
that the FBI is planning a sting operation?
I agree that they're playing a sting operation, but I don't think that necessarily means that they were trying to get him to do anything illegal then and there, or that they were clear enough in getting him to do something illegal such that it would stick in a criminal case.
Well, the reporting says that they were just waiting for him to assume office to see if they could get him on the substantive bribery charge by getting him to actually, reach out to them when he assumed office. But then they would stop before they could do that. So the reporting seems to suggest that they were looking at that $50,000 cash as a moment of substantive liability, unlike what you're saying. The reporting doesn't suggest that they were doing that $50,000 in cash just to establish a relationship and embed themselves. That isn't what the reporting says.
You don't know that the further interaction has to do with the $50,000 in cash. You
They
don't
were
know
they were planning on reaching out to Homan after he took office.
You don't know that was for the 50,000. They could have been reaching out and saying, "Hey, now you're the big shot. We're
No,
gonna
no,
give you
I'm no.
60,000."
Oh my God, this is insanity. No, I'm saying their plan was to use that initial gift of cash as substantive evidence of guilt of bribery. So they did think that your contention. I'm just trying to show you how it's relevant. You're saying, oh, that $50,000, they could, in response to me saying, well, they were planning a sting, so they weren't planning something legitimate. They were planning something illegal because it was a sting. The nature of a sting is that you're doing something to make it illegal. You're setting someone up to do an illegal act. And so obviously they wouldn't do something legal. And your response to that was, well, that could have been the first step of a longer sting operation, this specific component of which wasn't an area of substantive liability, but basically the $50,000 was just to grease the wheel and get their foot in the door. That's basically what you were saying, right?
That's basically it.
Yeah, but I'm telling you that's contradicted by the notion that the DOJ thought they had him dead to rights on a substantive bribery charge the minute that Homan reached out to them after he took office, but that it was closed before then. And so it was not the case. They were just using this as a greasy wheel, as a greasy bit of cheese to help them out. And if they wanted to do that, they would have just transferred him the money legitimately. But they gave it in bills, right? The fact that they were doing it in cash, doesn't that belie the notion that they were trying to make this seem legitimate? They weren't trying to make this seem legitimate.
Because you try to get him to accept the notion that cash is how they do business, and
So you
then
think
once
the
you got him on this sort of quasi incriminating thing of taking cash, you could sort of leverage it against him and be like, "Hey, we got you taking cash here. All right, you're in our pocket now, okay?"
Right, because the taking of cash is evidence of illegitimacy. It's evidence of illegality.
Evidence? No.
Yes, of course it is. You know it is. They're bills. So of course you yourself just said, hey, this maybe was them to set up a course of conduct of them using bills. And then later on they would say, hey, we got you taking cash. So you clearly have an understanding that taking cash of that quantity, by cash I mean bills, is evidence of illegitimacy.
Or you think it was coins? Like,
no, because some people say you paid cash for that house. They don't mean bills. They mean you paid it in actual deposits that you have. And so I'm saying bills to stress that it's not just cash in terms of like a transfer of money. It's literal dollar bills.
All right. Yeah, I don't.
The reason you pay the reason you pay with bills is to hide. Agreed? Because otherwise you would use transfers because it's secured. There's evidence of the transaction. You're not holding large sums of cash on a fucking, apparently he was in the Kava restaurant. You don't go to a fucking restaurant to accept this shady money.
Why? So you could do it on a security camera in Kava, like in front of a ton of people?
Yeah, why would you think you go to Kava?
In a public place?
Yeah, he's going to a public place because he knows this shit is fucking shady. He's taking the money and it's in cash. Even he's potentially risking being followed or someone stopping it. Like, this is not the preferred way to do things for legitimate transfers, and you know that.
Yeah,
I was
it's
given in a
not the
Kava
preferred way
bag.
to
Well, I don't
do
know where it was
things.
given, but whatever.
Look, I just think they need to release the files on
No,
this,
stop.
right?
We're going. Don't abandon the conversation. We're having a conversation.
We're looping.
So we're close. I think we're close. You admit this was a sting, correct?
I admit this was a sting.
You admit he accepted $50,000 in bills.
Yes.
You admit that Homan is planning to take a position with the administration if Trump wins, right?
Yes.
And you understand a sting fundamentally as preparing to impose substantive liability based on a set up criminal act, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Given this, why do you think that the FBI would be setting up a legitimate transaction to occur in the 3-month interim between Trump winning and Trump taking office? Why would it be in their interest to set that up? And what evidence do you have of such a scenario that you just invented?
To establish a business relationship with the guy, and then evidence would be that is what he purported to do as the president of this company. That's what his company was for, helping people with their contracts.
So that doesn't make any sense, and I'll give you at least 2 reasons why it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense to say that this is to establish a business relationship with Homan, because Homan was closing off his business. He was preparing to work at the administration. And so it wouldn't make sense to use this $50,000 to sweeten the deal to get into the business relationship, because Homan was preparing to close off his business operations because he was planning to lead the deportation effort. That's one point, and I need you to address it. And the second point is that the evidence that we have is that the DOJ was going to use his $50,000 of cash, not just as a way to enter into a larger relationship, but as evidence of substantive guilt of bribery. That's what the reporting says. Those are 2 pieces of evidence. I'm going to repeat them more summarily so that you can address both of them. The first is the notion that the DOJ was just using this $50,000 to establish a general business relationship is belied by the fact that there was an expectation that Homan would be working with the administration and not in business because he would be focused on deportation. That's evidence that cuts against your invented scenario. And number 2, the actual reporting shows that they were planning to use this $50,000 transfer as evidence of substantive guilt for bribery. Both of those things contradict your narrative.
Okay. So to one, I think by establish a business relationship with the guy. Clearly, they intend to do business with him once he's in the administration to get him to do the bribe businesses and
Oh, then now you have a problem. Now you have a problem because, and the problem is they're planning to do business with him while he's in the administration. They're planning to do a bribe, and this $50,000 is to effectuate more bribe that goes on. What are they planning to do in that 3-month interim, and what services were actually rendered by Homan? And the answer is none. There's no evidence that he was providing services in the interim window, or that they would have an expectation. Because it's preposterous to think Homan wouldn't have come out and said, "Hey, this isn't an illegitimate transfer. I was providing services to them." Because he almost certainly was not providing service to them. Because if he was providing services for them, he wouldn't have accepted fucking cash. By services, I mean legitimate services.
Okay, I think my points on the cash thing.
No, but even beyond that, they would have. Homan would come out and say, "Hey, this was a legitimate transaction. I consulted for these people. This is preposterous. What's going on? This is a nothing burger because this is a legitimate thing. I was just I did a bunch of slide decks for them. I gave them a bunch of strategic advice, et cetera, et cetera." He hasn't come out and said it. And he would be aware of this investigation as well because the DOJ, they close it off in January and February. So this has been around and percolated. It's not like they had no idea of what was going on here. So Homan almost certainly has a heads up about what's happening. So it belies the notion that he is not prepared to say, or he wouldn't immediately be like, "Hey," if someone accused you of taking a bribe and doing something, wouldn't you be like, "Hold on a second, that was not a bribe at all. I rendered services. Here are all the records of me emailing these people." The minute someone accused you of that, right? They haven't done that. It wasn't in the reporting at all that he was actually providing services in that window. And these news organizations would be opening themselves up potentially for liability if they omitted that kind of shit after they made those questions. And I do think it's something they would have asked. And I do think it's something the DOJ would not have pursued to like set up this contractual relationship where we're having slide decks, right? There's no way in which the DOJ is going to be pursuing this larger business relationship and have that be omitted from the bombshell reporting. Because there were no services rendered in that interim. Because if they were, we would have heard about it. And frankly, it wouldn't have been paid for with fucking cash. And you know it. Fundamentally, you know that. By cash, I mean bills. And there was no expectation that later on he would be providing these kinds of services, consulting, etc., because he was going to be a member of the administration. And so what help was he going to provide as a member of the administration? The answer is obvious. Sir?
I just think they should release the files. I don't
Okay. So what do you think is more likely? That they was actually rendering legitimate services in this interim, or that Homan understood the nature of what was going on?
Okay, well, I think his lack of comment isn't all that surprising, considering he was the subject of an investigation. And, you know, you don't want to self-incriminate.
He's not the subject of an investigation. They dropped the investigation. That's the whole story.
Okay.
They said this is a baseless investigation and it's politically motivated. He's in the clear. He's friends with Trump.
That doesn't mean he's going to get a pardon necessarily. And so you want to, and also
the investigation is over and he probably will get pardoned.
Well, maybe he just doesn't want to get pardoned for whatever reason. But
oh my God. This is okay. I actually think I'm going to stop the conversation. Hey, this was great. I think that you might be a plant. Can you confirm you're not a plant?
I'm a plant. I'm an animal.
All right. I had to end this because people are going to think I just planted this guy. What can I say? Whew. I don't know if he was a troll. Maybe I'll make a little video edit. And we'll leave it to the audience to decide whether he was super serial. But yeah, what can I say? What can I fucking say? All right, folks. I'm going to send you somewhere. I love you guys very much. Thank you for the subs, for the support. And actually, I don't know where I'm going to send you. I could send you there, but I think that this person might dox me by accident. So I'm not going to send you there. I'll send you to... Fuck it. Kid Not Can. I'll send you to Kid Not Can. Tell him he's a doo-doo head. Stay cool.